Hey everybody, I'm Chandler and I'm here with Poffo, and this is the start of our hangout, and we may have some people join us. We may have Guyus Seralius, I don't know how you say his name.
I think it's Seralius, Guyus Seralius.
Guyus Seralius. Yeah, I was calling him Guyus Seralius. and then there's Clint Grierson, the vegan dude. I saw his link about Bill Nye saying that plants are the future sort of thing. Yeah. So yeah, and here's another thing that's a little bit weird. I don't know if you're familiar with Francois Tremblay or whatever his name, and I don't know how to pronounce these people's names.
Who?
It's Francois Tremblay or something. He has this WordPress blog, The Prime Directive. He's an anti-nihilist, so I'm pretty sure Trick knows who he is. I read his blog sometimes, but I didn't like his recent one because he was saying that that vegetarianism doesn't have a moral high ground, and he was acting like here's what. It's weird because he was acting like, oh, veganism isn't the only solution, and that some people can't survive on a vegan diet.
Yeah, I hear that too.
And I'm like, what in the world? What is this? I hear. I come across this every now and then that some humans can't survive on a vegan diet. I'm like,
first of all, there's the myth, the blood type myth that it's only for certain blood types. If you have a certain blood type, then you can't. You have to eat animal. You have to eat meat to get what you need. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's been dispelled. There's no credibility to it whatsoever. That's like saying your hair color determines your digestive system or something. It doesn't work that way. Like when you assimilate nutrients and enzymes and stuff like that, like it doesn't go intravenously, and it has nothing to do with and there's been many statements and testimonies of people who have very rare blood types, whether it's type O, double negative, whatever. They that's a band, by the way. Type O negative. They have all these weird blood types, and they're vegan, and they're perfectly healthy and fine. So
type O negative? What's that?
Oh, Chandler, man, we gotta educate you. It's like a goth band. It's a goth band. It's like a kind of a melodic goth band. Type O negative. You should listen to it. I think you'll dig it.
Oh, it's a band. I thought it was an actual blood type, man.
No.
Because I've heard of O positive. That's my blood type.
I don't even know what my blood type is, but basically, and actually in the movie, in What the Health, they completely dispel that. They say that it has nothing to do with anything. It's just an excuse. It's just another excuse. I mean, our ancestors ate meat. That's what caused our brains to grow. Cavemen, hunted to survive, and that's the way, the law of nature. So that's what we should do now too. And
it's silly. And here's another thing that I find a little bit interesting is this idea of pescatarians. These people who they don't eat any other animals, but they eat fish.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time understanding that one.
I can help you sort of understand it a little bit, because I was almost considering being a pescatarian before I went vegan, because I still considered animal products to be food. I still thought of it in terms of we need the omega-3s and the fatty acids, the essential oils, and the B12 and all these kind of things. And you don't get B12 from fish necessarily, but I was still thinking in terms of the idea that fish is healthy, and it's actually been ingrained in us that especially cold water fish is really good for you, and there's no cholesterol, and it's definitely a healthy alternative. And then there's this thing where there's not as much of an association with the cruelty and the horrible conditions in factory farms as you would, as a vegan would, with a chicken or a cow or a pig, because fish, although they are sentient and they do experience pain, and this has been scientifically proven, it seems that what they undergo is not as severe. it's not as extreme. So you think, well, animals eat fish, other animals eat fish get caught all the time, fish multiply very quickly. It's easier to be more apathetic about it, I suppose. But here's the line that where it gets drawn. I would no longer fish myself. I used to fish growing up as a kid all the time. I would always catch them, throw them back, and sometimes we would eat them. We would take them home and eat them. I always had a problem crabbing, though. I felt so guilty when I'd hear the crabs being boiled alive in the pot, scratching. I would cry. But I grew out of it, and now looking back, I would never fish again. I would never go fishing and catch something and kill it and eat it, because I have this philosophy of ahimsa, to do no harm, and it fits right in with my biopantheism. So if I wouldn't, catch and kill a fish right now, why should I pay someone else to do it? And of course, there's the knowledge. We know that the oceans are completely being over harvested, and actually what fish suffer and what fish go through as they're being hauled up in the nets, and all the other animals that are being affected as well, the marine mammals, dolphins, and all kinds of other species that are being harmed and affected. So we know that we can live on a plant-based diet, and that it's healthier. And now that we know that there's no need to consume any animal products, then we don't have to. The last thing is taste. Is I grew up in a beach town that was really, really seafood based. Everything kind of revolved around that. And so I ate a lot of seafood, and I grew up eating seafood, and just shrimp and scallops and oysters and just fresh catch. Every restaurant I ever go to, once a week, 2-3 times a week, we would go out to eat at a seafood restaurant. So it was a part of my culture and part of growing up. And I really enjoy the taste of grilled salmon and stuff. So that's the only thing that I miss, is the taste. But again, it just becomes a moral, ethical choice where I'll say I don't need it. I can get what I need elsewhere. And if this comes down to just a taste that I'm craving, well, that's kind of selfish of me. I weigh out the cost, and it's not worth it. So I make the decision. Other people, because of the reasons I mentioned, would probably find it harder, because it seems like fish don't have emotions, because it seems like their deaths are quicker, and not as drawn out as a chicken or a cow or a sheep. See, so these things create a kind of more of a justification in your mind, and you can be a little more complacent when it comes to seafood. And because they have taught you over and over that seafood is so healthy, but now again, because of Fukushima, because of all the radiation, because of the mercury that's in the water and in the sea life, it's actually very unhealthy, and we never know if what we get might be contaminated. So there are a myriad of reasons why we should be completely plant-based and eliminate all fish and seafood as well. And the reasons for it are just not as compelling,
Yeah, that's very interesting, because to me it's clear that fish suffer too,
Right.
And it's weird because, one thing I'd like to be able to do is to actually farm seaweed, and
Seaweed, yeah.
and just eat the seaweed, because
It doesn't seem like it would be too hard, you need this salination, you need the salt water, right? What would you need? There need to be like currents and certain microbial life forms that they would feed off of, and how would it work?
I'm not entirely sure, but all I know is that there's all this seaweed that just grows in the ocean.
Yeah.
And so theoretically, if you had your own little shallow artificial ocean that was salty water, and these plants that grow in the ocean grew in there, then you could just basically you could eat that stuff rather than eating the fish that eat that stuff. And
actually, it's funny. Amber makes sushi all the time, vegan sushi, and we'll use the seaweed and the I forgot what it's called now. I feel stupid. They wrap it, and it has that taste. It has that fishy ocean, that salty kind of marine taste. So you can get the same taste from the oceanic vegetation, and it doesn't have to be sentient life forms that you're eating. She makes really good fruit and veggie sushi, and pretty much, I've cooked tofu on the grill, and I've seasoned it just like I used to season like flounder or halibut or whatever mahi-mahi. I used to love mahi-mahi. And like I would season it the same way, and I realized like this tastes the same. We can get the same flavor, and it's all in the seasonings, and you can even get the same texture if you know how to like grill it right. So there's a nice like crispy.
Yeah, because that's what people don't realize is that all these people who say that meat tastes yummy, no, it doesn't. They're talking about store-bought meat that has already been flavored with all these spices by other people. That's what they're talking about, because as far as
real meat itself is real meat itself is very, dull and it's just we're just getting the texture and flavor. That's what we're really enjoying.
Yeah, because that's the thing is, back when I did eat meat, I didn't like the taste, so I smothered it in ketchup just like I do everything else.
Oh man, ketchup! I gotta get some recipes for you. That's why whenever we do like a FaceTime or Hangout or something, I'm always cooking. I'm like, hey, look, Chandler, check this out. Here, this is how you can season this up. Like little oil and vinegar, little parsley, salt, adobo, basil. Like I try to teach you how to cook, man, because it's terrible. Like it can't be good for you just to pour ketchup on everything. I mean, there's corn syrup in there. And
I get the kind without corn syrup, by the way.
Oh yeah,
I can't consume that stuff.
But you put ketchup on salad?
Yeah, I'll take a bag of the salad. Like it could be coleslaw, it could just be some mix of salad that has some cabbage, some carrots, or whatever's in there.
Why don't you make a salad dressing? Look, apple cider vinegar, olive oil, salt and pepper, a little agave syrup. That's perfect salad dressing right there. Like you don't have to put ketchup on salad. I can't imagine what that would taste like. I use ketchup.
It works, and so does that Veganase stuff.
Veganase, yeah, Veganase. Veganase is great. I use it on burger. I use ketchup and Veganase on burgers, and when I make coleslaw. I haven't tried any kind of like mock tuna salad yet, or mock chicken salad yet, but I'm sure I could do that with the Beyond Meat chicken strips. But I basically just use ketchup. Maybe on potatoes or French fries and burgers. That's it. I don't use it for anything.
Yeah, well, you remember, man. All my life, I've always been that dude who loved ketchup. So everything that I still eat, and all the stuff that I used to eat that I don't anymore because I'm vegan, I put ketchup on that too. I used to do ketchup on eggs. I put ketchup on fish sticks. I am just like nuts about ketchup. And there are other people like that. They put ketchup on everything.
Well, that's cool. I mean.
Just today for lunch, I opened up a can of black beans and put it in a bowl and put some ketchup on it. It was great.
Black beans and ketchup?
Yeah.
Dude. I like chickpeas. I'll get if I'm hungry and if I need energy, if I'm just low on energy and I just need something, I just eat a can of chickpeas with just like little sea salt, maybe some like oil and vinegar and parsley. But like because chickpeas are like real dense.
Yeah, that reminds me. I still have some of these left. I got these chickpeas. They're just organic chickpeas with coconut oil and cinnamon and salt and stevia. It's like it's very interesting. A very, very crunchy snack if you feel like you want something that's like chips.
Yeah, I like those green peas too. Those dehydrated pea pods. Those are really good. There's like a dick.
Yeah, man. There's so much good stuff.
Yeah, totally. What was I gonna say? So, man, what's still bugging? Okay, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with you, if you care to discuss it.
Oh, sure.
What's going on with you and the other guys? And this trajectory that, or this quagmire that they continue to.
Yeah, well, okay, like now there's the time theory thing where Trick says that Mike is being irrational or something about the time theory, this eternalism thing. And then there's George on his crusade to convince the rest of the co-hosts that God is the universe. And that's interesting. And then the most recent topic that George suggested was a little different. It was something about mind over matter, matter over mind, or something like that, and the placebo effect, about how what we believe actually affects us, which
that's
a little interesting.
That's kind of interesting. Yeah, sure, that's interesting. There's 2 points I was going to make. I was actually just listening to the very first No Free Will Science and Religion podcast, the introduction to it, which was amazing because it was like all you guys. It was the first time you actually started. The first episode you started the show, and you kind of were breaking it down, the importance of dispelling, refuting and dispelling the free will myth. And I thought it was just fascinating. And because Trick was on point because he just finished writing his book, and you were very very erudite in the way that you were describing it. And George was all excited, of course, and talking about his experience and everything. It was just really interesting. It was the very first. It was the introduction, the first episode. I don't know how it came up, but I clicked on it.
Oh yeah,
because I've always felt that okay. And I didn't finish it. I didn't finish listening to the whole thing, and I was waiting for it because I wanted you guys to get to the point where you say, okay, and now that we've explained all this, okay, here's the practical relevance of it. Now that we understand all this, we know all this, and it's important to try and abolish this idea, this concept, because of such and such, because of blah blah blah. And it never got to that point because that's what I've always said is this is an incredible, I don't know, an incredible psychological, philosophical, ontological notion, right? But to the average person, what difference does it make? I've always said that I understand all of it and I agree with it, and you did a great job of explaining it. You actually explained it the way I explained it about causal events and everything, going all the way back to the Big Bang, that literally the deterministic view, and that everything is related and nothing happens without a prior cause, blah, blah, blah. But you did a great job of explaining it. But again, it's like I understand all that intellectually, okay? Now in my everyday life and with regards to other people, where does it come into play? I feel like that there's never been enough emphasis on that, on the implication, on the practical takeaway of it. But maybe you have. I haven't watched all the episodes. So.
It's been a long time, but I'm pretty sure we did get into that, and in many of our episodes, in fact, that's kind of the primary thing. We get into all these things that need to change in the criminal justice system. This idea that people are punished because they deserve it, rather than to deter harm and stuff like that. That's the whole point, really, because it's not just some intellectual exercise for the fun of it, obviously.
Yeah. No, I know that you guys understand it and believe it and understand and see the relevancy. But what I'm saying is that just because the idea is so powerful and strong, it doesn't mean that okay, it's almost I relate it to kind of how Christians and creationists will say, we didn't come from pond scum, and it's so important that we don't believe in evolution because then we think of ourselves as just mere animals. And I'm like, but is it really that big of a deal? Most people, we recognize where we are, that we're these highly evolved organisms, and we have this incredible brain capacity and whatever. So thinking thinking that we evolved doesn't it doesn't hurt or infringe on your own sense of self-worth. That's what the Christians think, because their specialness has been built up to such an unrealistic degree because God has chosen them. They're so
yeah. That's the thing about it.
In contrast, it seems like, oh my God, if you teach evolution, it's going to demean the value and worth of life, and it doesn't for most rational people. It doesn't. So that's kind of like my point. Is I'm saying
I was talking with George about that it's actually not that big a deal to me, because I mean, it's obvious I'm an animal, and it doesn't matter what I evolved from because it doesn't change what I am, and I still want to treat everyone as equals. So it doesn't. Yeah, I don't see why it's a threat unless they have this specialness they want to maintain. For example, like the Jews, for example, believe they're special people. They believe they're God's chosen people and they're superior to the rest of the world, sort of a thing. Therefore, if it was proven that scientifically there was no Abraham from which they descended, they would be doomed. They would be like, oh no, our whole
their entire sense of political, social, their entire sense of religious and societal social identity is completely entrenched in their history, and that's what's allowed them. It's the stories they told themselves that literally allowed them to be so tenacious and to persist and endure as they did, and their entire sense of nationalist, that was the word I was trying to think of, their entire sense of nationalist identity would collapse, and that's a very sad thing that you can't just that you can't just recognize the inherent value of a living organism, of a human being, that you have to have a pseudo history to fall back on, and which also creates this disparity between themselves and the Arabs, for example, and there's this huge divide there, and there's so much hate between the Palestinians and the Jews, and it's incredible.
Here the weird thing about that specifically is, I have this sister
self-imposed distinctions between people. It's so unnecessary.
Right. Yeah, it's unnecessary. But here's an interesting thing. Even back when I was a Christian, I have this sister who she thinks that if she can find out that she's Jewish, that'll make her feel better. That'll make her superior or something.
It's the same thing. Yeah. What the hell? It's the same exact sort of false, I don't know, false equivalence. And then, I was going to say, I was trying to make that parallel that, like, okay, isn't that kind of the same thing that you guys are stressing the no free will myth so much, almost like the Christians are stressing that you have to believe that you were chosen and made in the image of God, because if you believe that you're an animal. And I'm saying to most people, they don't carry the weight, because most people don't even have the correct definition of what free will is, because they equate it to the ability to make choices, the ability to decide something. And that's not what it is at all. It's, it has more to do with the motivations and the instigating factors behind your choices, right? And so that's all I was trying to say, was it seems like there's that little parallel there. But again, I'm sure there's value in it, but it just seems like such an elaborate philosophical exercise that doesn't have the you don't get back as much as what you're putting into it. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean. And see, that's the thing about it. I mean, it's obviously important because we still live in a world where people do attribute, each person as the fundamental chooser or first cause of things, and that's why they hate them. It's like, you're bad, I'm going to punish you because you chose to do this,
Well, right, but what is that really doing? That's kind of more of like of just a living in a reactionary state, reacting in the moment emotionally to what someone's doing. So really that if you could generalize it, it's more about having a broader perspective on human psychology and just the nature of reality, and why people do what they do, nurture versus nature, and all that. So really it's just about having a deeper understanding and being less barbaric and primitive and reactionary and emotional, right? So you could teach people, say, let's step back, take the psychoanalytical approach, as they do in psychiatry and the good therapists, I guess, that would try to tackle the cause rather than just treating the symptoms, so to speak. And before I forget, the other thing, okay, we're trying to make this podcast. We've been trying to do this for how long, about the connection between veganism and pantheism. Why isn't George as adamant about doing the same thing? He's a vegan. I just realized, I just thought of it, that he's also vegan. So why?
Yeah, that's the
why
weird
is this not an important thing to him? Because he was like, oh, I've been vegan for 20 years, Poffo, blah blah blah, and I'm like, then why isn't this a priority to you? You're trying to promote pantheism, and you're a vegan, but like you're not recognizing this this inseparable connection that I've come to realize, that Clint has come to realize is there. And like, can't you see that this is a perfect platform if you want to, and this is what I really want to talk about on the podcast, that if you want to teach and promote pantheism and your form of pantheism or whatever, that like there is this incredible movement, this revolutionary movement that is like sweeping across the world right now, and it's entirely based on the idea of loving and respecting other life forms. I don't understand how you're not making the connection between what pantheism, the practical application of what pantheism, of what it implies, because that's exactly what it implies. It leads to ahimsa. It leads to even in Wiccan traditions, it's do no harm, and whatever you do comes back on you threefold and stuff like that. Even in occult circles and in Satanism, Aleister Crowley, it was like, do what thou wilt. This is the law, but you do what thou wilt under love. Like a lot of people don't know that. That's the second half of that. It says, do what you will, do what thou wilt, but do it under love. Love is the law. So you can do anything you want as long as what you do is in love, and then you're free and you have complete freedom. So all this concept is the core of every religious system. Every religious doctrine has this within it. I don't want to say it's the fundamental basis of the core, because there's a lot of different motivations behind why religions start, but it's in there. It's in almost every mystical tradition, of the idea of love and to honor and respect life.
Yeah, so, and see, that's the thing, is that George is not there yet, because he's still stuck in this thing where he's got to convince us that God is omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient, and all. He's stuck with all this, and so it just becomes this word game that never ends. So
it goes back to what I said. What is his motivation? What is his real motivation?
What's interesting is that he never actually answers that. Like I've asked him, I'm pretty sure Trick's asked him, Mitch asked him, okay, let's say we agree with you, God is the universe, then what? Do we start praying? What's up with that?
What's the practical takeaway? What does it imply? I could say to you, Chandler, God is the universe, and the takeaway from that is you are God. And so am I, and so is my cat, and so is the goldfish, and so is the pig that you're about to slaughter. That is powerful. Once you connect the dots and you say, wow, holy shit, everything is holy, everything is sacred, everything should be honored and respected, and the natural processes and the natural systems and the life cycles that surround us should be revered and understood and comprehended, and there isn't a deep beyond intellectualism. It's beyond just a cognitive assent. So it's almost like George's pantheism represents, like a lot of what I see in my groups is kind of just a cognitive assent without practical implication. But you know what? I could be completely wrong. I don't want to. He's not here to defend himself. So
right, yeah. But see, here's the thing about it is basically, now I know that Trick really thinks words are important, particularly. But the thing is, which words we use specifically are not all that important. For example, I never started calling everything God, and I don't really call myself a pantheist, but I did have a moment where I connected and realized, well, I'm really not different than all these other animals, and leading to me going vegan, and so. So it doesn't require a certain set of words, and so it's when people get tripped up in these words that they are a little bit lost, because if it's just agreeing, it's sort of like if everyone started all agreeing that cats and dogs were synonymous. You know what I mean?
There's a reason for the distinction. That's what Trick says. It says otherwise it becomes arbitrary. It becomes meaningless. It loses its value. There should be that distinction. Hey, look! I think Guyus is there.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
You there, guys? Can you hear us?
Guyus, are you there?
It might take him a minute to get connected.
Yeah, right now
put your camera on, man. You got to show us your pretty face. You can't hide behind your icon today. There you go. What's up, man? Can you hear us? Say something.
Yeah. Hello, can y'all see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can see you now.
Check out his mic and stuff. You got look at that setup.
Oh yeah, that's
awesome.
Professional. That's professional.
Awesome.
It told me there was an error, and so I just got through canceling it, and I thought I couldn't figure out how to get it to work, but then it worked. So
yeah, who knew?
If we do the podcast, we don't have to use the video. Just let you know, but this is just for us because we're kind of getting warmed up, and it helps.
Oh yeah,
I know. It helps kind of talk about it before we start. So
yeah, sure, yeah. Because Poffo and I have just been here. We've been talking about veganism and pantheism and all that good sort of stuff. So yeah, so Guyus, I listened to your talk with Poffo. I guess it was a week or so ago, something like that. And yeah, you were talking about some interesting things that I was curious about too, like the whole Big Bang thing being questionable.
Yeah,
I found that kind of interesting, because I don't even understand the Big Bang. It's like everybody seems to be saying that the universe was like smaller than an atom and then just exploded, and now we have all these. Everybody
says this because they don't understand what was before the Big Bang, but I've explained that the nature has always existed in some form or another. Of course, it doesn't make sense to think of something coming from nothing. So in that sense, I think me and Guyus are in agreement. But he actually also questions the actual the actual logistics maybe of the Big Bang, because he's read a lot of research and how it may have not occurred the way that we have conventionally believed.
Also, when that theory was first introduced, they were trying to paint that picture as though it was an origin story, as though it all did kind of spring from this singularity, and that it was a kind of a beginning. And there was a lot of connection. A lot of people liked it because it kind of had a connection, or it alluded to the biblical creation. And so that's why, a lot of people kind of flocked to it and really adopted it and really liked it, because people have a tendency, and I get this. We even as children, we see things begin, we see things transition, and then they end. So we have this instinctive urge to want to see a beginning to something, So it's hard to get past that initial instinct.
We think in terms of linear time, right?
Yeah, in fact, this relates too, because in this movie, it's an awful movie, by the way. God's not dead. This guy tries to make a case for the existence of God by using the Big Bang and say that. And yeah, you saw that. So he says that that's what happened when God said, "Let there be light." Then there was a Big Bang. It's like,
yeah,
I have to disagree though a little bit. Maybe just in our source material, but I've actually heard it was the opposite. That the Big Bang, it was actually called the Big Bang as a joke. It was like, what, did it just happen like a Big Bang, and then it actually stuck? But that was what the scientific data suggested, and then it was later on that the creationists and the religious institutions tried to fit it in and say, see, it's just like Genesis. God said, "Let there be light." There was a beginning, blah, blah, blah. I actually heard that it was the other way around, that it was arrived at via the research and, the redshift effect and all these different things, and doing the calculations and the estimates. And then later on, it was the religious groups that tried to.
Yes, but one of the main proponents of that theory, I forget his name at the moment, but he was a priest, and he had studied Einstein's equations, and he had kind of did some reverse engineering. If the world was expanding, he decided to reverse that, and then he's the one, or at least one of the forerunners of this view that it all came from a singularity. And so a lot of people have criticized the fact that it was because it came from a priest, that he was trying to somehow match that with the Abrahamic view of a beginning.
Christopher Hitchens mentioned that. I was listening to a recording that Poffo sent me from Christopher Hitchens, and he actually mentioned that. And then the Pope supposedly offered to make it a dogma that people had to believe.
You can make a dogma if you want. And he goes, no, that's not how science works. He's like, we can make a dogma and everyone has to believe it. And he's like, no, that's not exactly the way. Yeah, I know that clip.
But what Guyus said there about how people, they perceive that things have to have a beginning and an end. It's true. People are that way because we see that in our lives all the time. Because we see new life forms come. We see people die.
Because we're finite, you know.
Right, we're finite.
We get old and age and die, and
but like
or at
now,
least our version is finite, you know.
Yeah, well, now, Guyus, I'm part of a series of podcasts that I've done with these other people where we've talked about the illusion of free will. And one of the things is that I've long held, hard determinism, that, everything's caused, and therefore anything that ever happens, something else caused it before that. So there's an infinite past. There can't be a first cause because there's no beginning.
Yeah, an infinite tail of regression or a chain of causation. Yeah, I did a video on free will, and I'm pretty much in the same camp. I believe in determinism, and I believe ultimate free will is an illusion. And I try to do my best to explain that, yes, we get to do what fulfills us, but we don't get to choose what stimulates us to want to choose the way we choose. So it's like it's kind of like
as Sam Harris says, you don't choose to choose to choose.
This is really important, though, because we understand the concept philosophically. I hear an echo. You guys hear an echo?
It's kind of like those Russian dolls within dolls within dolls. You can never escape that the realization that beforehand there are those forces, all that stimuli that stimulated a person to be inspired to choose a certain outcome or to prefer a certain choice. So,
I want to ask the question, Guyus. I wanted to ask you. This is a very important question. Me and Chandler were just talking about this. That even though we understand the concept philosophically, you guys can see me now. Even though we understand the concept philosophically, do you think that it holds relevance and meaning ethically or morally, like in terms of could it benefit society at large if we dispelled that myth and actually taught the truth about this near infinite causal chain of events? Do you think that there is a practical application of this that would actually improve the quality of life for people?
Not only do I agree that it does, I believe it would be harmful not to. One of the reasons, I'll give you a perfect example, that is prisoners, people who have done certain heinous acts, and they go to jail for it, and we punish them for it, and people want to take out their anger and frustration on these humans, which is really sad. But if you really look at it, ultimately it is not their fault that they didn't know better or that they were driven or stimulated to kill that person or to steal something. So if just in terms of that alone, how we treat other humans, if we constantly realize and remind ourselves that it's ultimately not our fault, we're just kind of along for the ride. I know people hate that. Like to think that we are that the universe is pulling all the puppet strings, so to speak. But it is, and if we realize that, it actually lifts a huge weight and a lot of stress and a lot of blame, and I mean unnecessary blame, the type of blame that's not productive. That's like trying to like I believe in rehabilitation. That part is.
I think you just passed the test and. Chandler, you're now Chandler's best friend because you're perfect. You're perfect for the show, basically.
Yeah, well, guys, here's an interesting thing. I believe that overcoming this illusion of free will has direct relevance to veganism, and the reason is because if you're a person who believes in free will and you believe each person is just fundamentally choosing to even prefer what they do, then we can hate and punish all the carnists because they like the taste of bacon, or because they're the author of it. So let's kill them.
There's a lot of hate in the vegan movement. There's a lot of misanthropic sentiment there.
And my thought is that to the extent that vegans become educated on human behavior and understand that it's not people's fault that they ended up becoming carnists, that they were indoctrinated and lied. We've all been deceived. Almost everyone who's a vegan used to be a carnist. They grew up that way. And because I realized that I didn't know better, I extend that to other people. And that's why vegans need to become educated and not be hating the carnists, because then that's why vegans have a bad reputation. Because
I totally agree, man. But aren't we really talking about just the powerful impact of environment? That what we need to be stressing is the importance of environment over a personal volition. That personal the personal volition and the choices you make are entirely predicated on your environment, are entirely predicated on your genetic makeup and your the nature and nurture factors involved there. So wouldn't it be more expedient to just teach the influence of environment, how much more important environment is than what we consider it to be?
Well, I think that would be a good start, a good approach, just because it's going to be hard to always win people over with the argument in of itself. But if you could actually just simply focus on the proper environment to produce and to provide for people, a good learning environment, a good nurturing environment, and an environment that's going to kind of nourish proper behavior among human beings and, create, hopefully the ideal society, or at least close to it.
I absolutely agree. That's more in the tangible efforts of how to sort of restructure society. I was speaking more in terms of the argument when you're trying to convince someone that they don't have free will. That's what I meant. But I agree with you guys. That's exactly what we should be doing.
So what was
important that because we're products of our environment, that if the environment changes, we change, and that's why rehabilitation is possible.
This is what Jacques Fresco and the Venus Project is all about. This is what
exactly
structural violence and Peter Joseph. That's exactly what he talks about. It's like we are not deserving or responsible for the good or bad we do. And that's the point, that it's actually a systems model. And this gets into my pantheism, is that it's a systems model that literally, if there's a body and there's something wrong with a body and there's like an organ or a limb or a part of the system, part of the physiology that's not functioning correctly, well, there's a synergistic effect in what you put into the body, and what your eyes are being exposed to, believe it or not, affects like your feet, and you wouldn't even think of that, right? But because it's an amalgamation of all these different processes that are all working together, that it's all connected. And so once you recognize that it's all connected, and this is the foundation of pantheism, that recognizing that we're all one, we're all part of the system, this gigantic, massive, incomprehensible system, then it makes a lot more sense that things aren't isolated. So to bring it back, even though we don't make decisions completely without influence. Everything we do has been influenced. So what you do, you can't 100% take credit for. That keeps you humble. What you do that's evil, you can't 100% be blamed for, and that takes away the responsibility. Not this responsibility, but that. What do you always say, Chandler? The
blame, like where you're self-blaming yourself for what. Yeah,
there's that. The inner critic as well, in psychological terms, so that you're not harming yourself psychically. But I meant revenge, like getting to take revenge.
Exactly. Because for one thing, progress is not actually made when it comes and just feeling bad about what you've done, or just being mad at someone forever for something they've done. First of all, that doesn't make anything better, just dwelling on what was done in the past and being mad about it. So even if there was such a thing as free will, it would still, of course, it'd still be stupid and useless to behave that way. But I think that this understanding of determinism helps lead people to pantheism and veganism in a sense too. When you begin to see that, yes, we're all caused to be the way we are by this whole universe-sized system, of course, and this idea that some lives are more or less deserving of life than others.
See, that's the core. That to me, that's my angle. Is like if we could just establish, teach, and promote, foster, and instill this truthful reflection of reality that all lives matter. That would eliminate so many problems.
Raising his hand, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I first started to realize, and this was years ago, but when I first started to realize that we are doing as the universe dictates, exactly as the universe dictates, it actually allowed me to be not only forgiving of others, criminals or people who do things against me that cause me pain or suffering in some way, but it's also allowed me to be very forgiving to myself. So like when I falter in some way or when I don't do as well as I would like to do, I always, remind myself, that little voice in my head. I'm like, you're obviously doing the best that you can, even if that is not always good enough, even if, it's not measuring up, but it's at least I'm always striving, even though that may not, meet up. And this is also with, criminals can say this, others can view their behavior and go, well, you know what, that wasn't good enough. Even if they're looking, even if they're being lazy or whatever, it doesn't matter. Obviously that was their best and they obviously thought that was okay. They thought that behavior was acceptable. So, but that's not to say.
How do you eliminate, people who use the devil made me do it, that say it wasn't me, I plead insanity, the insanity plea,
Well, the interesting thing about that is that same thing happens even when people do believe in free will, because then you've got, this whole demonic possession thing, and religious people can still just say that Satan made him do it. So I'm not so sure if that can be countered, because if you already have that kind of thinking.
But the free will is really intimately associated with traditional Judeo-Christian belief systems.
Yeah, it's an essential part. It's like you have to believe in free will. It's almost a dogma, you might say.
Yeah, it's the source of evil.
You deserve to go to hell.
We chose to eat the fruit. It's the source of all evil. Go ahead, guys.
The important thing I wanted to add, which I also had described in the video that I made on free will, is that even though that may be the case, that's not to say that we shouldn't constantly strive to better ourselves, or to not, steal, not to kill, not to do what we think is right. Even though I know that all this is predetermined or written in the stars, whatever, even before this planet was formed, it was always predetermined that we would be having this conversation on this day, and even though, my destiny is fixed like that, I go ahead and try to move through life as a participant, because that as well was part of the scheme, me participating in the way that I do, So I'm just always trying to do at least what I think is positive, at least what I think is the right idea. And that's about the best we can do. And to also have that positive influence on others, if we can constantly strive to do that. Now, it was always written and meant to be, if I succeed in doing that, or if someone else succeeds in doing that, that was already, meant to be. But still, if we just throw our hands up and say, well, you know what, it's all predetermined, I'm not going to even play along or participate. Well, that too.
The funny part is that too is predetermined.
That too
misunderstand.
Predetermined. So you just want to go ahead and participate as though you do get to have ultimate choice. Go ahead and just pretend, play along, and try to do good and try to spread good.
For logical, rational people, I go so far as to say for intellectuals like ourselves, this all makes sense. And what I really want to get to, because I don't want to get so much into our specific sort of doctrines and theologies and stuff like that, because what me and Chandler really try to focus on is the takeaway and the practical relevancy. So what all this stuff is making me think about, it's a fascinating discussion, but what I really want to focus on is what will work to make the world better, that to help along human evolution, because not everyone thinks like this. Not everyone is an intellectual. Not everyone takes the time to contemplate and think and reason things out rationally, and not everyone's a philosopher. So, like, for the masses, in terms of what applies to the world, at large, what is it that is actually, what can we do?
Well, one of the things
that would be most beneficial,
One of the things to do is, for example, what we're doing right now is to constantly try to communicate those views that we believe and hold to be true, and to use social media just the way you both are doing and the way I'm doing to try to spread that message and kind of give serve as a guide to kind of show people, because yes, they do have to walk through the door, but we can at least point to the door, kind of show them the way. And, we may be wrong in the way we direct people. I'd like to think that I'm right. I'd like to think that, I'm directing people correctly. And I'm going to continue to try to do so until someone can convince me that my direction is incorrect. But I'm going to at least try.
The enlightened ones just need to set the example. We just need to put it out there and set the example. And the ones who are more highly evolved just need to manifest that and express that. And then other people, whether it's in our generation or even generations to come, can pick up on it and learn from it. And
because it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a slow process. In fact, we are part of the process that even came, there were those who came before us, Parmenides, Socrates, these people came before us, Galileo, Newton, and they tried to help us.
Hold on, my mom's calling me for something.
Okay.
So continue.
But yeah, these people, he had to go for just a moment.
Gotcha.
But these people, there were those who came before us who kind of helped to set a path towards correctness, towards the things that we need to learn and the how we need to behave and how we need to treat one another, and how we could successfully create a society that is successful. So, also to your question earlier, what can we do? That I'm constantly advocating that if people could come together and pool their resources, like-minded people who at least share a fundamental set of principles to serve as a foundation. I'm not talking about like a detailed philosophy or a detailed religion. I'm just talking about a fundamental set of principles. And if people can come together and form societies, communities, co-op businesses, where they pool their resources, create their own educational centers, create their own media centers, and do their own scientific research, because there's so much misinformation and disinformation circulating out there right now. So if we can just stop relying on this like central hub, like, for example, a government of a country to tell everybody what the reality of the situation is. Stop relying on mainstream science to tell everybody what the reality of the situation is. So if we can pool resources, get people to come together in smaller units, and to kind of constantly replicate these petri dishes where we can experiment and sort of feel our way through it and try to focus and hone in on what humans, how humans should behave, how they should interact, and how they should sort of build a society together that functions, that's fair, that's just. And I believe we will.
I agree. I mean, it sounds great, man. I just know that it's not going to work in mass because people don't have the incentive. People are driven by greed, by selfishness, by their
don't be too pessimistic. Don't be too pessimistic, because I have learned, I've witnessed, I've observed that there is actually a huge number of people, but they do need to be filtered out, because you're right that there is a huge number of those who are sort of like their doppelgangers, but the evil version, the evil counterparts, the you might think of it as the yang of the yin. There's always going to be those naysayers and those people who are constantly serving as an opposing force, whether they're corrupt, shallow, whatever.
In some way, maybe that's part of it. That's that resistance.
Yeah, those two forces are going to constantly be at one another, and we have to do our part and push back. And right now, unfortunately, and through most of history, the dark side has dominated. But I have slowly seen this. I've told you before, the tilt is slowly coming, because more and more people, thanks to the internet and thanks to more and more people just becoming aware of what the truth is, whether it's about the food industry, politics, you name it. We are all becoming more and more aware, more informed, and we're starting to share those ideas with each other. I would just say be patient and have a little more faith in your, in the human race. I have enough faith that I know it's hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's hard.
Because
I don't have faith in the human race. I don't have faith in the human race. I have faith in the omnia, in life itself, that life itself is on a trajectory toward greater and greater levels of self-awareness and coherence and cohesion with itself. I believe in that trajectory, that evolution itself is bringing about higher states of consciousness and more altruism and more.
Well, the omnia is responsible for the human race. So, but nature is not always able to get it right away. In fact, it's kind of part of that tapestry not to get it right away.
Destroy the planet, and we might be the one failed experiment, just like 99.9% of all the species that have ever existed have died out. So that's what I worry. I think me and Chandler both are very concerned about that just we see the human race being the most influential, most powerful, and yet most destructive force on the planet.
That's good. That's good that you see it that way, because that's going to put a kick in your complacency or everyone's complacency, and it's going to motivate you to try your ass off to make sure that doesn't happen. So
I've never been complacent. That's one word you can't use to describe me. Since I was a Christian,
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's and people in general, people have this fear that, the end of days is coming. And there's a part of me that's glad that they feel that way, because that's what's going to motivate people to move. And I wouldn't want you to be complacent, and I wouldn't want you to think, oh, it's going to all be okay. I want people to feel a sense of anxiety and urgency. I want them to.
Guyus is the anxiety producer. He's getting everybody stressed out, but they're already stressed.
But again, even though I know,
like the 2012, and there was this huge thing about like it's going to be the shift and all these earth changes, and then there really was like a shift in consciousness there because we're all so focused on it.
Yeah.
Part of the culture.
Yeah.
So there is that kind of a psychosomatic effect, and even if something isn't true, when you believe it enough, it manifests. It becomes the reality because we follow the stories that we tell each other. The cultural myths.
Yeah, all I would say to you personally, Poffo, is don't lose too much faith just yet. In the human race, because I know you. I don't want you to get a little too worried and stressed over it, but do try to hold on to a lot of that fear that it's not going to work out, because that's going to serve you. That's going to serve, hopefully the world, I don't
have to try. I mean, it just comes naturally, man. It's pretty organic. It comes naturally. I see a lot of cruelty. I see a lot of violence. I see so much just disgusting hypocrisy and lack of respect for life. Especially as a vegan activist, I wanted to get into because we're all over the place with this, and it's cool.
I thought this topic
organic.
was going to be. I thought this topic was going to be on veganism.
Yeah, no.
Well, that's where we were trying to go.
This is the setup for it, so we can all kind of get warmed up, and then we're going to edit it.
Yeah,
on
a related note, though, related to what you were just talking about, I saw that documentary Carnage, where it's like the futuristic UK where everybody's gone vegan, but there are still these people feeling guilty about their carnist past. That was that was like one of the most interesting things I'd ever seen.
It's a good take on it. Yeah, they took that humorous approach, kind of like a sardonic kind of sarcasm. It was interesting. That I think that might reach like a good percentage of people that. And
it could be true. Like it could happen that way. It may take a few centuries, but I do think that it will come a time when, just as most of us look at racism and sexism to be wrong now, and we look at just 50 years ago the racism that was going on and slavery of humans. In the future, people will look at what humans now are doing to these other animals, and they'll look at it as the same thing. Like, that's unacceptable. Like, what was wrong with them?
You just quoted Da Vinci. Da Vinci said something very similar to that. In the future,
he did say something like that.
Yeah. I just watched like a video of Trump passed another bill saying that hunters can shoot black bears and hibernating animals and stuff. I mean, there was one from a while back, but he signed another one, and it was just showing like these hunters up in these perches in the trees, and they're shooting black bears, and I'm just like, I just cannot fathom. Okay, that is what needs to change on a fundamental level, like the speciesism, the exclusivity, the human race, this entitlement. That human beings.
What's sad is we got to get the right leaders. We got to get the right leaders in place, and unfortunately, the reason why we have the wrong leaders in place is, once again, people have not been properly made aware of what the reality of the situation is in terms of politics and what works and what doesn't work. So right now, to me, the far right wing agenda is got all the wrong policies, all the wrong ideas, which will actually take the human race backwards. And, if you go to the far left, can get a little kooky too. So I'm always finding myself in the middle, that moderate, moderate Democrat or that centrist position. And if you can find more sensible leaders, and I see this happening already. Here's another situation where I'm not that worried, because I already see a growing awareness among the younger generation where they're becoming aware that the Republican policies are just simply not the right ones. And so when the older generation is starting to get weeded out and they die off, and the new generation starts coming up, they're already measuring a major shift statistically. And if people would just get out and vote, in fact, they say that statistically Democrats would win every time. And Democratic policies.
I think it's a flawed system. I wouldn't support the current political system at all. This is the first thing I ever said on Chandler's show.
Well, yes, but
support it at all. I think it's rigged.
Yes,
because
you want
to choose the money that actually makes the decisions. Whoever is lobbying the most, and who's got the right connections, and whatever is part of the agenda that's already in place.
I know, but you do want to choose the best of two evils, even though, like I've always said in a lot of my writings, that I think change primarily needs to take place from the ground up, the grassroots effort. Some change will take place from the top down. I'm confident that will happen to some degree, but we can't rely on that entirely. And like, for example, if we had gotten Hillary in office, that would have just been way better had we, compared to Trump. But I do believe, and I say this to people all the time, that, it basically takes a pile of dirt to grow a rose. So there's always that. I believe good will come from the fact that Trump was elected.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that law of compensation kind of a thing. It woke everybody up. It got everybody scared, shitless.
Yeah, I've said this, that it actually is creating such a pushback. I mean,
yes.
It's
actually, I think it was actually better now that I look, and I realized this the night that he got elected. I was explaining this to my brother. I said, you know what? It's probably better that this happened. That it would have been, if Hillary had won, all that would have happened is everybody, including Democrats, would have continued to bash her, and it would have not caused that awakening that happened when Trump won that. So it's gonna provide a bounty.
A common enemy unites people. I mean, the enemy of my enemy is
it's even uniting.
Yeah.
It's even bringing Republicans over to our side, at least our side.
Because he's so extreme. Because he's such a douchebag. He's so completely self-absorbed, and he's doing everything like literally taking us back, like as you said. But we don't want to talk about politics on this show.
Here's my first question I would like to ask, and I'm going to read this because I have this written out.
Sure.
So
about veganism.
Here I'm going to shoot.
Yeah.
Yes, this is about veganism. It seems the way nature and the universe are set up that life is meant to feed off of life. So throughout most of the Earth's history, we have usually been forced to feed off of one another, even animal meat, especially when plant-based foods become scarce. Are you against I'll hold off on that. Like when it comes to scarcity, or like let's say Eskimos, what are your thoughts regarding Eskimos who live in such cold climates and have, they have to eat fish and sea lions and whale blubber all their lives, and even use parts of those animals to make things like clothing and candles and so forth. And the same goes for Native American Indians who often hunted buffalo and ate their meat and used their hide, bones, tendons, and other body parts to sustain their way of life, yet highly respected the animals and tried to even view them as fellow beings. Most of them often held the view that one should consume and use the hunted animal in a non-wasteful manner, or it was disrespectful to the animal and Mother Earth. So just when it comes to scarcity,
guys,
their environment.
Are you an Eskimo? Do you live in the North Pole?
No.
Okay. Are you a Native American living back in the early 1600s?
No.
There's your answer right there.
But what are your thoughts?
Right now, hold on. From a philosophical standpoint, that's a separate issue. If we're speaking on an ethical, philosophical standpoint, like were they wrong for doing that? That's a separate topic. That's a separate subject which we can answer. But I'm asking you, at this moment in time, in the West, in America, in the United States, if you have access to an abundance of fruits and vegetables, and you can sustain yourself and provide for yourself and fuel your body on an entirely plant-based diet without the need to slaughter animals, if you can do that, then the ethical point is you should. Now,
yes, I agree.
Getting back to, you're talking about the Inuit people and those who live in these inhospitable climates, or in the past, those who lived throughout the Ice Age when vegetation was scarce and early hominids and Cro-Magnon were forced to hunt and kill other mammals and stuff like that. Again, the most pertinent point here is that we're not in that situation. So why are we going backwards and looking at the past?
Okay, yes, I'll answer that.
What we're doing right now. Hold on, wait. Let me finish the point. And then the second thing is, since we're not in that situation right now, what is relevant and applicable to your life, to your health, to the environment, to the sustainability of the species in this planet right now? What's the ethical thing to do right now? That's what you should focus on. So all you have to do is ask yourself the question: I am not an Eskimo. I am not a Native American. I can ask those philosophical questions, but right now, with regards to my diet and what I consume and what I'm paying for and what I'm promoting and contributing to, that's the more salient question: is what you're doing right now and what your needs are right now. So
yes,
think of it that way.
To answer that, I'll also be asking one of my other questions. I do agree with you, by the way, 100% that in terms of right now, we need to do what we can and do what we think is correct. I was just curious. and here's part of my next question. We stand on the survival. We stand on the shoulders of those before us who had to do that to survive and progress. And so, they required, in a lot of cases, they required eating meat and using animal parts. And I was just curious of what your thoughts about the fact that you and I are that part of our survival, that part of what made you and I possible to even come to this point and to survive and to make that decision to change our ways. But that it's dependent on the universe set it up. I hate to use the term set up, but when Earth was formed, just the way the universe works, it set it up to where scarcity happens in nature. And when that happens, like Eskimos, and even Eskimos right now, how would you view Eskimos that live right now, that live up north in really harsh conditions? And that's what they do. They live off of seafood and sea lions and whale blubber, and they use that. It's so integrated in their whole way of life, the way they make clothing and candles, and just, so how would you view?
I got it.
Okay.
I've heard that. You got to understand something, guys. We address these questions at least 20 times a day. We hear it all the time. So it's a good question. It's a perfectly legitimate question. But it's not something I haven't heard before. And the answer is, most of what the vegan movement represents is in terms of the West and the United States, and trying to influence people in a first world sense. If we're talking about those people, then it comes down to the people in the, in those kind of cultural and geographic locations. Then what we're talking about is, I believe, in a sense, self-defense. You are trying to survive. And there was nowhere near the exploitation. It's not exploitation. It's just survival. They're on a much more primitive level, where they are operating more as a less highly evolved animal would, in terms of their survival instincts and just doing what they need to do to survive. I would push toward moving them to a more hospitable climate where they can grow vegetation. They can, so that they can get with the times, and there's no need for this. But at the same time, again, we're talking about the loss and the harm. It's not that the suffering is any minimal, but the sheer quantity of suffering and torture, and the idea of artificially inseminating and breeding and the horrible housing conditions, none of that exists. I mean, we're really talking more about a more primitive form of human that's living more like another animal would, out of necessity. So I would, my points would be, take them out of that environment and put them in an environment where they grow vegetation. But I'm not judging them right now either. I'm not saying they have to be vegan, because there's literally no food there. Because just like the polar bears eat the seals, and they're Homo sapiens who are eating the seals and fishing.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. Yeah. But another thing to consider is, not only are we not the Inuit, we're not the Eskimos up there, but we're also not talking to them. They don't live in a first world country with computers and internet where we can do Google Hangouts. So we're not talking to them. They don't know we exist anyway. Right. That's another point.
True. Yeah, this is not the vegan movement and this ethical philosophy that we're trying to institute is a mentality that we're hoping that will spread to all corners of the earth. But we're not going around with a blanket rule, like judging everyone for wherever they're at. I could say the same thing of tribes in Africa and stuff like that, and they probably hunt gazelle and things like that, because it's very dry there. There's hardly any vegetation. But again, that's more about human evolution. Like we're at a point, societally speaking, where the evolutionary level that we're at, that's where veganism comes from. Actually, it's always been possible in certain geographic areas where people are thriving, where it's a good climate, to be vegetarian. That's why you have Pythagoras and Da Vinci and stuff. But the vegan movement itself is unique to Western culture. So does that answer your question?
Yes, and in fact, I just wanted to say I loved your response and answer on that. I love that you were saying that in those circumstances, in terms of self-defense and survival, and as long as they're not abusing or taking cruel advantage of the animals.
I don't believe they do. I don't believe it's done in a. It's not done for sport. Okay, it's not done for trophies. It's literally done for survival, just like the Native Americans. But again, that's not our audience. That's not who we're speaking to. So it doesn't apply.
Right. Our audience is those who can easily go vegan, have plants available. And I just wanted to let Guyus know that, I had told Poffo I'm available till 5 because that's when I'm having supper with my mom. So she'll be expecting me. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave this on here. Just leave it as it is. It'll still keep recording you guys talking. So if you want, you could go on for another 2 hours or so. I don't care.
And Clint might actually join us.
Okay.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
So awesome.
And then later on, I'll be able to hear everything I missed anyway. So it'll work out great. But yeah, I thought that was a very good response to that question, Poffo. And let's see. Now I have 7 minutes. So is there one more question that I can hear?
Yeah. Go ahead and answer. Let Chandler answer something.
Okay. Well, this one ties in, and so whoever wants to answer this one, you kind of already answered it, but it was just one of my questions. I'll throw it out there just for the audience to hear. In terms of vegans out there listening, what they might think about the fact that in the animal kingdom, we're always witnessing in nature animals eating other animals. And so is there ever going to be a time where vegans would like to try to prevent that, would try to stop lions from eating, antelopes and deer?
Where's Trick? We got to get Trick on here.
Oh, yeah. Trick talks about
this all the time.
You'd like him.
Yeah, and stop stop the crocodiles from eating.
You're speaking of the heterotrophic nature of living organisms. That life is fueled by other life, by consuming other life forms, and not all life. Some are completely.
Yeah. And so even if I become a permanent vegan, there's a part of me that's saddened that that's just a part of the universe, that the universe feeds off of itself. That's the theme I'm going on. And that we will have to come to terms with that to some degree, that's the way nature works. It's, it feeds off of itself. It's
that's
sad.
That's the way nature works right now. But we are also manifestations and products of nature who have evolved to this level, to this cognitive understanding. So think about it for a second. If this is one aspect of nature that has evolved to this point, and we recognize that this is no longer necessary, and we can the least amount of harm we can do is by eating fruits and vegetables and vegetation, then think about it. Then when you raise carnivorous animals together, or omnivorous and carnivorous animals together, and you provide them, you can even provide them a plant-based diet with supplements, and they no longer have the drive, the instinct, because there's not that that survival drive is sort of suppressed because their needs are being met. Their basic, they're not having to compete. They're not having to fight for space or territory. We are domesticating dogs and cats. So think about it. Take that scenario, the way a dog and cat can live on a vegan diet, and they can thrive on a vegan diet. Take that scenario and apply it in mass to the whole animal kingdom. It's possible. It's actually, theoretically possible to do that, to end the kind of violence and starvation and predation and cruelty and suffering that occurs naturally. We can actually influence that if we get our shit together first.
And how about you, Chandler? Would you?
I said I was going to let Chandler answer, and then I just blabbed off.
Yeah. He interrupted again. Poffo does that. yeah. That's the thing. I mean, because there's still that suffering of wild animals killing and eating other wild animals out there, and so I would say if humans can get their act together, then it would be nice. Like what I'd like to see is sort of reservations where these animals have access to all the plant-based foods that they need, so that they don't have to. They no longer feel the need to go and kill and eat these other animals. And I realize that we can never stop all the suffering, right? It's not like we can stop every shark from eating all the other fish in the ocean, obviously. But it's just doing the most we can, obviously.
Okay.
But remember, when a lion is fed, they'll drink water in a stream right next to a deer. Right next to
that's the idea.
So like it's totally plausible. They only do it for necessity. They only do it for the sake of survival. So you meet their needs. Create synthetic meat, has all the nutrients they need. I mean, you can do this in a zoo type situation. You can do this in a home. I'm telling you, there are like thousands of cases of animals that in the wild would be natural enemies, would not coexist, and they coexist because their basic needs are met, and they're in a secure environment where they're not forced to compete for survival. So that's all you have to do. Again, it goes back to structural violence. Even in the animal kingdom, it's a form of structural violence that can be mitigated and sort of reformed by changing the environment. It's all about the environment.
Before Chandler has to go, I do want to insert this quick question because it's a kick in the cornflakes. It's a pretty. I don't know how many vegans ever talk about this, but whenever we starve ourselves, and nutritionists are starting to say that it's actually healthy to somewhat starve ourselves, and it leads into a mechanism in our body that's called autophagy. Where your body's, your cells are able to be broken down and repaired and rebuilt during that period.
Intermediate fasting.
Yeah, and there are times when our body actually leaches off, our own gut leaches off of itself, and so we eat ourselves. So we're eating meat. So vegans will never be 100%, truly vegan because we're eating ourselves, our own fat lipids and our own meat.
You sort of personified it. We're not eating meat. We're absorbing the nutrients. We're absorbing vital nutrients and enzymes from other aspects of ourselves. Like life has to absorb other aspects of life. We're not necessarily eating meat. Yeah, it's true that when a person is starving and they're completely emaciated, their body it caves in. It turns on itself. It starts to devour its own proteins and stuff. That's true because life feeds on life. What we're talking about is what life are we going to choose to feed on? And if we can feed on non-sentient life, then that's what we should do. That's
okay. And I'm also curious, and you may know the answer to this, you may not. It's kind of a technical, scientific response. Do you know if that also harms our health in the way that those documentaries, like what the health?
If what harms our health? What?
We're eating our own flesh.
I actually have to go. Now it's time for me to go. But
we're talking about cannibalism. You can't go yet. Come on.
I know. I don't want to go, but that's the thing. Right. My mom would be pissed if I broke my promise. And besides, I'm hungry, and she prepared supper. So.
Don't eat yourself. You better let him go eat.
Yeah, I don't want to eat. I'll eat myself. You guys don't let me go eat supper with my mom, so you guys continue.
Chandler, thanks, man. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
Yeah, in fact, let me mute my mic too, just in case.
All right. And so we'll be able to shut it off, and it'll shut off.
Yeah. We just end the we end the call. We just hang up.
Yeah.
It's a good point. I mean, everything you're saying, I can tell they're well thought out, but they're not uncommon. These are the first questions that we ask, that we all ask ourselves. So we're talking about the heterotrophic nature of life feeding on life, and it's just that for conscious, sentient, sapient beings like as we are, like ourselves, we can choose where we derive our nutrients, where we derive our nourishment from.
That part I liked about your response. You totally, I'm with you on that. The second part of that was a more, clinical response in terms, and like, again, you may know the answer to this, you may not. I'm wanting to know, is it equally as unhealthy for our body to leach off of itself compared to what they described in those documentaries, like What in the Health or What the Health and Forks Over Knives? You know how they go into sometimes great scientific detail of why eating meat and animal fats is bad for your body. I was curious, do you know if leaching off of our own body, eating our own lipids, eating our own gut lining, is that just as bad for us and we should maybe prevent our bodies from starving itself? Because I actually, I don't know.
Of course. I mean, you're talking about anorexia. You're talking about a level of disease and
but some nutritionists say that we should do a little bit of
intermediate fasting kind of helps regulate. We're not talking about just a day or two, maybe 3 days tops of like water fasting or juicing and stuff.
Or even just a few hours in the morning each morning.
There's nothing. That's why it's called breakfast. You break your fast. You haven't eaten all night. Like, no, there's nothing wrong with fasting. Fasting is good for you. It's healthy. But you're talking about a prolonged, extended deprivation of food and nutrients, that's completely unhealthy because your muscles atrophy. We need to continuously absorb, other elements, other aspects of nature, of the universe, of creation. So what we get vitamins from the sun. We get it from the roots in the earth. We get it from some of the bacteria like the B12. We get it from the other organisms that we feed on, and that's necessary because there's a cyclical process. There's like a life cycle that's being enacted here, which is it's necessary for movement, for growth, for homeostasis, for metabolism, and like what all we're talking about is making more conscious choices and decisions on where we derive our proteins, our nutrients, our vitamins, and essential the elements that we need to exist. So, like, if it's completely scientifically proven that we can live and survive and thrive on a plant-based diet, that's what we should do because plants don't have these complex nerve endings. They're not experiencing the suffering and pain that cows and chickens and sheep and lamb and and fish are what they're going through, what they're experiencing. It becomes an ethical, moral issue. Veganism is a social justice movement. It's not a diet. It's a social justice movement because it also involves, we never talk about it, but it also involves leather and wool. And,
right. I'm going to get into that.
All these other animal products and stuff.
In fact, let me go ahead and get into that right now.
Yeah.
Would you be opposed to using animals as long as we treated them with respect and kindness?
We're talking about backyard eggs and milking cows that are well cared for and ethically treated. Sure.
And let's say one example I give is, for example, shaving sheep in the summer and using their wool to create clothing. Would you be against that?
This is very. It's a bit of a complex issue, but it's easy to explain if you just bear with me, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Number one, we don't need to do that. We can create our own synthetic clothing
and cotton and cotton.
There's no need for it. There's no need to use animals for any of this.
But if they did and they did it with kindness, would you be against it?
But you're missing the point. You're missing the point of what veganism is. You're selectively pulling out certain extenuating circumstances and saying if this was possible in this way, then that's going to determine what I do and what I contribute to in the grand scale. And you're missing the point that hold on, guys. Let me get this out. You're missing the point that like what we're trying to move away from is the idea that animals are here for us to use. Because that's what's led to this exploitation and this horrible abuse and cruelty. Of course, if I shave my pet lamb and I'm careful and I don't cut them and I use it and I utilize it like that, but we're not living in the Middle Ages. Lambs are bred, their tails are cut off, they're castrated, they receive lacerations, they're horribly treated. This is the mass production of the industrial animal agriculture. Is an industry, and so it's about the maximum amount of output in the least amount of time, which ends up the result is the least amount of care and concern for the objects that you're exploiting. Basically,
I'll tell you why I bring it up.
That's what makes it wrong. What makes it wrong is that it's unnecessary. One, in our modern society, what makes it wrong too is that you're continuing. The idea of doing this is perpetuating the mentality that animals are here for us to use, and they're not. They are their own life forms. But if an extenuating circumstance like that exists, of course it's not wrong because you're not actually harming the animal. But there's no way to police and monitor that in every backyard farm and in every place on the planet. So what we're trying to do is just develop a generalized mentality about using animals, that we just shouldn't use animals at all.
I'll tell you why I bring it up because, and this will feed into my other questions.
Does that answer your questions though?
Yes, you're helping. You're helping, but I still have a little more on that last one.
Go ahead.
And it's the reason why I brought it up. When I fantasize about creating the ideal society and having people come together and create communities.
Oh, there was one other point I need to interject before I forget. You're also missing, when it comes to food, you're also missing the point that it's not food for humans, that the human physiology, if we're in terms of food, like with eggs or milk these things are actually not good for our body.
Right, I know about that.
About doing it ethically, you still haven't understood the concept that like it's actually detrimental to our body, that we shouldn't even be considering these things as substances to ingest in the first place.
Right. We're in complete agreement on that. After I watched those documentaries, I discovered just how unhealthy it is for our body.
Right.
But right now I'm just talking about in terms of animal production or the wool, that they produce. And like the honey that bees produce.
Right. The honey issue is very controversial, and there are vegans that are almost split down the middle when it comes to this, because they say that we have a symbiotic relationship with the bees and we're helping them to sort of stop the colony and pollinate, but then it's also a form of exploitation because the honey is made for them, and so we're stealing their food basically, and it's done in very careless ways where the queen bees are clipped, the wings are clipped, and a lot of, hundreds of bees are killed in the process of extracting the honey. Go ahead.
Your mind's going a million miles a second.
No. Just trying to answer it comprehensively.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
You hit the nail on the head when you said, symbiotic. When I talk about bringing people together, trying to create a community, I've often fantasized about finding ways to incorporate where all life, not just humans, but animals, we all come together and try to work together as a cohesive team, doing things for each other, but not in an abusive, cruel way, but just in a harmonious,
it's a beautiful vision, man. I have the same vision. It's a beautiful utopian vision, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what you're missing is it's not consensual. Okay, the key to symbiosis, the key to a symbiotic relationship, like the little birds that pick the food out of the crocodile's teeth, or the remoras that swim along with the sharks.
I'm hoping
they eat the leftover parts. They're doing that, but they're both choosing to do that. That is
I'm trying to focus on only the things that would be agreeable on both life forms. So, and I was going to try to give you some examples.
When you get a sheep or a cow's consent to stick your fist up its ass or to shave it violently, then you can talk about a symbiotic relationship. But until then, that's not a symbiotic relationship. Right. That's
like I was talking about, like I was referring to when sheep are shaved only in the summer when they get too hot, and it would be agreeable both for the sheep and for the person to shave them if they can use the leftovers, the byproduct or the outcome of that. And using termites who love to eat on wood to try to create mulch for gardens.
No, what you're talking about is a homeostasis, like an equilibrium with the animals and the environment.
Honey. And I would never want to exploit animals or do anything that we would perceive is in any way harmful or displeasing to them. But would you be against any kind of symbiosis there where we let them do what pleases them or what we perceive, pleases them, what we think pleases them. And then sort of as a give and take process, we do for them, we help take care of them, they help take care of us.
Of course not. I mean, this is what exists in terms of domesticated pets. This is what the relationship we have with domesticated cats and dogs is, exactly that relationship. They rely upon us for food, and there is a symbiotic relationship. There's a very close symbiotic relationship where it actually becomes ethical to spay and neuter them for their own, because you need to limit that natural reproductive cycle in certain situations. What you're talking about, Guyus, is a very beautiful, very poetic, I want to say an Elysian vision of a utopia, which it's not far fetched. This is what I fantasize about myself. This is what we're all working towards. But I have to make this point. You've got to understand this point. That is not what exists today. That is not what we are opposing. That's not why we are vegan.
Oh yes, I understand.
What we're opposing is the ultimate corruption of that. We're opposing what has come about due to the massive population explosion and the demands of how many billion people now on the planet that are just raping and slaughtering, and they're just insatiably
I'm with you on all that. You don't
drawing out all these natural resources and beyond none of it's sustainable.
You don't have to convince me on that.
Yeah,
I get that.
And the other point is, you are an ethical person. You're a kind-hearted, moral, ethical person. So whatever it is that you the situation that you would try to create in relationship to animals, I have no doubt whatsoever that it would be decent, that it would be noble, that there would be a very harmonious, altruistic situation there. But that's not what we're talking about. Here's a tricky. We're having to oppose the exact opposite. So in the future, that's what we're working towards. Is that kind of
that would be nice.
Symbiotic relationship.
Here's a slightly trickier one because it's a gray area. If we were to raise and take care of an ox, feed it and really take care of it, love it, do you think it's okay to expect the ox to help us in return and to help us plow fields? As long as it wasn't abuse?
No, because
if we fed
this is cultural conditioning because we've used before we had technology, before we had machinery, we relied on animals that were stronger than us to do our work for us, to help alleviate some of the burden of the work that we had to do. But we are imposing on those animals. This goes along with horseback riding, dog races, all of it. We're imposing on the animal kingdom our own selfish, wants and needs and desires.
Wait a minute, though.
That ox is not desiring to do that. Even if you're rewarding it, it has no choice. You're a higher evolved being that's.
But it's for the overall system. Is what I was trying to get at. It's for the overall system. So it's not just a selfish thing on humans. Remember, it's a symbiosis between us and the animals and the termites and the fleas and whatever. If we all try to work together for the overall system, and if it all is, and they're not intelligent enough to understand that there's a purpose behind it. But if we could treat them with love and feed them for a whole lifetime and give them a really good life, and where they have green grass, they have children playing around, whatever. And then the only thing we ask for in return is if we, get them to plow fields, not in an abusive way.
If we have the technology at this point in our evolution, if we have the technology that we don't need to rely upon animals as work slaves, then it becomes immoral. It becomes unethical because you have a more efficient ethical means to do it, and you're still relying on other life forms to do it. Well, I gotta ask you the question. I gotta say this: would you choose to do that? Would you like to get that yoke put on your shoulders and spend a 10-hour day like plowing and for some other species? We're talking about slavery, guys. You have to understand we've enslaved animals for our own selfish our own ends.
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about. The liberation of animal life is what it's really about.
Yeah, I've heard people make the argument that horses, for example, love to get out and run, and that they think that they can gain a pleasure in helping their owner, do things. And
there's definitely a relationship there. There's definitely a relationship, but there's also studies that show that the back riding on their back is not good for them. And that doesn't mean that people don't take amazing care of their horses, like better than their own children. I've seen it. I've worked in stables and worked on farms, but it's still we're trying to get away from the idea of using animals for pleasure, using animals for us.
But not just for us, not just for pleasure. Again, it's for the system as a whole, trying to incorporate shared labor among us, and we all benefit one another. I mean, life is hard. It's not going to all be roses, but we all have to struggle somewhat. We humans have to struggle. They have to struggle. There has to be a shared struggle, a shared sacrifice.
Two answers to this. When we get to that point, when we have that kind of a society, that kind of utopian society, where we have raised the attitude, the mentality of human beings, when we've elevated the status of animals to persons, and we can love and respect them as individuals, and no longer see them as lesser beings that are just there, for us to exploit and manipulate and dominate. Once we view them in that way, then we can talk about this. But until then, that doesn't exist right now. And number two, it's unnecessary because we have the technology, because we have the robotics, because we have computer systems. We have the mechanical means to do the same thing without having to manipulate another life form to doing it for us.
I keep trying to raise that point. You know how I feel about complete automation, like tractors, especially if they use fuel like oil and gas. and even electricity. I'm all about, like I said, there's a lot to be said for allowing children to go out into the fields and to throw the seeds and to water the crops. And let's not try to fully automate our lives. I do believe
you're misunderstanding the concept.
I believe technology has its place. There are places where we do need it, and it's very appropriate. But I hate this idea where
don't be afraid of
automated.
the science fiction notions, of machines taking over the world. This has been like bred into our minds through culture of like films like Terminator and The Matrix and stuff like that. Like
I'm trying to find that balance.
There should be balance, and technology is our friend, and it's all about. You really should research and look more into the Zeitgeist movement and the Venus Project, because that completely explains. It helps you understand.
I felt that the Venus Project was a little excessive for me, because I've read through it and it just felt like it was imbalanced to me.
No, it actually represents the most sane path we could take at this point right now in terms of sustainability.
But you felt it was a balanced approach?
Oh, absolutely, and it's just a suggestion. It's just a set of ideas. Jacques Fresco is an engineer. He has designed these structures. He's a sort of a social re-engineering society. In a sustainable way, according to natural law, according to a systems model perspective, and that's what's so important is that you're the one that's actually imbalanced, guys, because you're afraid of technology taking over, because the people who are in charge of technology, and we become more and more disconnected. Let me just make this point. We become more and more disconnected from the earth, from our animal selves, that we need to get back out and get our hands dirty. And I agree with all of that we need to learn to forage, and we should be growing our own food, and we need to go backwards, a little bit in terms of our connection to the earth and our appreciation of living systems and gardening and that kind of lifestyle is much more preferred and much more healthy. That doesn't mean that that we can't use the technology that we have, the advancements we've made at this stage in our evolution to make things more efficient, to build things that last longer.
I agree, but I just feel that it's a little excessive at the moment, or that it's growing. It could be going in that direction where
everything's out of balance in human society right now. Everything's out of balance. Yeah. We're talking about taking the good aspects and applying it in the right ways. I mean, because this is Fight Club. I mean, Tyler Durden, this was his whole philosophy. Was he wanted to do away with the monetary system, bring everyone's credit back to zero, and just go back to like a primitive. This was this kind of regressive philosophy that was in the book that he wanted to. He just felt like we were vain and shallow and superficial, and we needed to get back in touch with like what it really means to be a man, what it really means to be human, and I agree with all of that. But in the course of integrating these advanced technologies, we don't have to lose any of that if we have a foundational philosophy, a mentality that says that we are animals, and there's nothing wrong with that, and we can embrace our essential animality, if that's the word. And I agree with you. So you're just kind of expressing the doubts and fears that a lot of people have about technology, about
but don't you think it's just
transhumanism?
Don't you think it's a justified fear?
It's a justified fear, but you could go on the other side and say that what I'm talking about is also a more pertinent fear and concern. Is that like what we are doing to other life forms and what we are doing to our own humanity, like that it's our own ethical evolution that's at stake here. That like as a species, as long as we continue to enslave and abuse and mistreat other animals, we will enslave and abuse and mistreat other humans, and we'll never make progress. Like we have to see all life as sacred and precious and divine. And that's what I would like to get to when you're done with your questions, because I want to talk about pantheism and how all this is related.
I'm almost finished. I guess one of my last questions, not the last, but one of them is, what do you think about, and you, not just you, but all vegans, hopefully they can add comments to this video later, because I'd love to see the comments of other vegans on this video eventually, if not right away. What do y'all think about the fact that evolution, during the process of evolution, when early man started to eat meat for the first time, Then his intestines shortened up. He started to stand upright, and his brain started to grow.
It's a fallacy. It's a myth. That's a myth, guys.
Oh, really?
I gotta stop you. That's a myth.
Oh, that's
our
interesting.
intestinal tract is exactly homogeneous with a herbivore. Like our intestinal tract and our brain development. Our brain development came about because of our ability to make fire and to cook root vegetables, to gain the nutrients and the vitamins that we needed to be able to store food and cook all the root vegetables that we couldn't cook before. It came with the introduction of the ability to make fire, to cook our food. Cooking the root vegetables and getting all those starchy, the starchy vitamins, nutrients, and proteins, that's what allowed our brains to expand, along with a bunch of other factors. It had nothing to do with meat consumption. Like meat consumption just coincided around the same time at different points in time.
I'm definitely open to that. I'm open to that. So you think that's a false correlation there?
Well, that's a complete myth. It's been completely dispelled. No, just look at our intestinal tract. When you compare the digestive system of a tiger, a bear, a wolf, and then like a primate, like take a chimp, a bonobo, a gorilla, orangutan, or a human, we fall in line with the herbivores, the frugivores, actually, with the great apes. And our intestinal tract is completely designed to process high levels of vegetation, of plant matter, okay, and nuts and seeds, and we can obviously we can digest and process meat, but it leads to all kinds of problems. It leads to all kinds of digestive problems and cancer. Because of how long it is, and a carnivore's digestive tract is so short, it passes the meat through very, very quickly, and they chew up the bone, the sinews, they drink the blood. They don't need to cook their food. They have a stronger pH. I mean, their acidic levels and their stomach acids are much stronger. Their saliva is much stronger. Everything about our physiology, it's across the board. I mean, we're herbivores.
So when man
specifically fruit, we evolved from frugivores, from the tree dwelling, fruit eating monkeys.
So when man finally did start to eat meat, which we seem to have evidence of, like because we see
sure.
cuts and bones and things like that from early man. Do you think it did lead to certain changes in the body through evolution? Do you think that played a role in any kind of physiological?
We adapted to be able to process it, but we've never adapted to process raw meat. It's only because we were able to cook it
definitely.
and literally strip it of all the vital nutrients and kill all the bacteria that's involved. So and meat was much less a part of the diet than people think. When you think of caveman, ooga booga, hunt, spear, kill, all that stuff. That was a part of.
But obviously,
just like the Native Americans, but that was a part of their life. But what we did basically was we did whatever we had to do to survive. We were omnivores.
Right, but obviously we didn't start out eating meat, right? I mean, obviously through evolution, or maybe we did. Hell,
we were opportunistic omnivores, which means we also scavenged. So we would eat whatever was available at the time, and then with the advent of the agrarian revolution, when we became farmers and we learned how to grow crops and stuff like that, that's when the human population exploded. And we went from being hunter gatherers and foragers and scavengers to a agrarian culture, to a farming society that was able to grow the food, store the food, and of course dictate and dominate that distribution, that resource distribution to other people. And that's how religions came from, the priesthood and stuff like that, because they originally owned all the granaries, and they would relegate who got what. But so what you have are the beginnings of human disparity and stratification right there with the advent of the agrarian revolution. But of course, it also helped us because we were no longer having to fight and struggle to survive, so we were able to get our numbers up. So does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, very well. My next question series thoughts. What kind of shampoo do you use right now?
I don't shampoo my hair very often.
Well, when you do.
But when I do, obviously I use cruelty free. I'll just buy whatever is not tested on animals. I mean, it's really not that hard. Like
what I found that
for the things that say not tested on animals.
I found out that most shampoos have gelatin in it, which is obviously from animals. And so do you and do other vegans try to avoid traditional products like shampoos, toothpaste?
Yeah, of course. No, there's thousands of lines. There's thousands of markets of soaps, face wash, mouthwash, toothpaste,
makeup.
Shampoo. I mean, it's makeup. Makeup is a huge thing because there's so much cruelty has gone on involved there with the testing, and then even using whale oil and things. And it's you got to understand something. It already exists, Guyus. Like there's a V stamped on it, and all you got to do is look for that.
Right. I'm aware that there are vegan products, but I was just curious about your opinion specifically, and I'd like to hear from other vegans what they think about even a product that uses not the fact that you're ingesting it, but just using a product that might have even just a little bit.
No, if you're paying for it, then you're supporting it. Then you're contributing to that inhumane process of manipulating and exploiting animals.
Now, what if you found out that a medication, because also medications use a lot of animal byproducts and stuff.
The capsules are made of
what if you found out that there was a medication that could save a loved one, someone that you dearly love, and you found out for some reason, because like right now there's a jellyfish, they're extracting, I can't remember if it's a protein or what, but there's something from jellyfish that they're getting that's supposed to be like this really rare chemical or protein they're using in medicine now, which is really helping to save lives or whatever. But
I mean, these are sort of principled arguments that you're asking, not so much practical, but you're trying to go like across the board in terms of principle. But remember that read the statement of what veganism is, as far as you are able, as far as is practical. We try to.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
and avoid harm.
I was just going to say that I've heard enough of a lot of your comments tonight that I could already answer that for you. And I know that you would say that if you can afford it, if you can get away with it, of course, don't do it. Yeah, but if you can't, self-defense or whatever, to go ahead and use it.
I also want to make there's also a point. I believe that whatever they're extracting from the jellyfish, by the way, they're not called jellyfish anymore. They're called moon jellies because there's no such thing as a jellyfish. Just like starfish, they're not called starfish anymore. They're actually called sea stars because they're not technically
I've heard that before.
They're not classified as fish. So anyway, but that's just the biologist in me nitpicking. But no, whatever it is that you are extracting from the jellyfish, I guarantee you can find it. That you can find a plant-based source for it. You can find it somewhere in nature without having to.
I hope so.
Derive it from a living being. I believe that. I believe that literally, like the earth has provided everything we need, and all we have to do is look to Mother Gaia and just examine our own physiology, and we have all the answers. So when those this is equivalent to let's see, it's kind of analogous to, okay, you're driving down the road and there's a deer and a little girl on the road. Well, you're going to hit one of them. Which one would you hit? See. These value judgment type, hypothetical scenarios are difficult because you never know what you would do unless you're in the situation. And then, of course, we are actually hardwired to create more emotional and mental associations with those that are closer to us, those in our immediate circle.
I just wanted to know if
family members and friends and stuff. So there's a biological imperative to care about those that look more like us, those that are closer to us, and not care about those that we don't see, that we're disconnected from. And so there's a lot of that. But again, the pantheistic idea, the model is to represent, love and respect for all of life, that because even the ones that are ugly and weird and are disconnected from us are also significant aspects of who we are. Those are all parts of what we are, parts of nature.
I just wanted to know from you personally, and even from other vegans, whether or not y'all allow a little wiggle room. And it sounds like I would like to think that a lot of you would. So that's good. That's a good thing.
Okay, I'll give you. I don't want to play devil's advocate, but I guess I will. I just want to be honest with you about this. Okay, my mom had severe problems with her hip, and she was going to get hip replacement surgery. And she was in excruciating pain, okay? And I had learned, before I went vegan, I had learned of certain sort of natural remedies and stuff like that. And she was about to go in for surgery. And I had heard that actually mixing up a packet of gelatin and drinking the gelatin would help with the collagen and the putting back the fluid in between. I don't know if it's the hyaluronic acid, the fluid between the joints. And she started taking it, just little packets of gelatin, a little cup of gelatin, just a little powdered gelatin, and all of her symptoms improved. And she's pain-free. She's walking around. She's doing great now, and she's not getting the hip replacement surgery. And literally, it's taking the packet of gelatin. So I told her, because she's vegan as well, I said, keep doing that if that's working, because it's that important for you, and it's that important for your health. But we should be looking for alternatives. Let's look for a plant-based alternative for it, and until we find it, go ahead and keep using the gelatin. Because she even asked me about it, and she's like, but I feel bad because I know this is the ground up pigs and cows and everything, and the hooves and the horns. This is where it's coming from. And I'm like, I know that we can source it somewhere else in nature, in the plant kingdom. But for right now, because I care about you, okay, and I care about your
health,
quality of your life and your health, then just keep doing it. And that's the only vegan thing that she's not doing.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel that way.
Let me continue on this train of thought.
Okay.
Honey was the last thing for me to give up, because I was taught that honey had so many medicinal benefits that it was it was so good, that it was antibacterial, antiviral, that it's the superfood that never spoils and all this stuff. And I had incorporated honey into a lot of my diet. I loved everything sweet. I loved the taste of honey. And it was the very last thing that I was on the fence about. Okay. And I just got to the point, I was like, you know what? There are alternatives. You've got maple syrup, you got coconut syrup, you've got date syrup, you've got agave.
Are they as effective? Are they as effective in terms of
what I've learned is a lot of what they promote and tout about honey is actually also a myth. That honey is actually acidic, and it affects your body in
it caused me to become inflamed, so I had to stop.
It's supposedly good for all these different things and all these remedies. I think that there is truth to some of that, but I think it's also overhyped. And again, we're trying to get away from the idea that animals are our property. That animals are should be treated as second-class citizens or just resources to be harvested and
especially if we can afford. Especially if we can afford.
So I just chose. I just chose to start. I love agave syrup. I just chose to start using alternatives, and actually, I love maple syrup even better. Than honey, because the honey can have this kind of acidic effect on you where you get heartburn from it.
I'm glad that you felt. I'm glad you feel the way that you do about the gelatin and that concept, because I too, due to my illness, I did a lot of research on the gelatin, and I started coming across articles that would promote it. And 1/4 of our body is actually made up of gelatin, and they said it's very good when it comes to building cells, repairing cells, and
gelatin,
all that.
Is gelatin the proper term for it? Because gelatin is the composite, form once you take these certain components, these amino acids and whatever, and put them together. I don't think your body is made up of gelatin. Your body's mostly made up of water, and there's a spongy material in between the joints and stuff like that. That might be what you're talking about.
Well, that's what I read. They said they actually used the term gelatin. And I can't remember, but it either uses the gelatin to create collagen and elastin, or
No, it's true that what's in the gelatin product,
that helps the body. Bottom line is I did notice an improvement when I started drinking it, like chicken broth. And I also bought the Jello gelatin, like you described, where it's just strictly the gelatin. I started doing that, and I did notice a significant difference in how it, seemed to help speed up my recovery and healing my gut. Although it is a high histamine food, but which can
also, especially in broth, there's a ton of sodium and stuff.
Right. You got to be careful.
I'm positive, and I will research it today. alternatives to gelatin, because I guarantee you there'll be an alternative for that.
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
If you put the message out there, like through this podcast, you'll get a million responses, and people will give you, point you in the right direction when it comes to that. There is no animal product, okay, that is more beneficial than a plant-based product, and there is nothing there is no benefit that you're receiving from eating, eggs, cheese, meat, and dairy that you can't live without, that you won't benefit from if you eliminate it from your diet. It's the opposite. It's the opposite of what you've been taught. Remember, it's complete cultural conditioning. Everything. It's just like, what was it? Camel is the cigarette that doctors recommend most. Back in the 50s, there was this campaign that had, it's probably not Camel, I think it was another one, but that they're literally, using doctors to promote.
I know. I see that all the time now.
Cigarettes and smoking and stuff. And so just think about that. That was only, however, 100 years ago or something.
Yeah. They even promoted cocaine.
100 years from now, just imagine how far we will go. And we're going to be like, holy shit. Like we were taking fish oil. We were doing this. We were doing that. And we were just listening to what all these supposed experts were telling us. Well, I mean, I can tell you right now that you can get everything that you get from fish oil, the omega-3s and whatever, from algae. And there's tons of plant-based sources for that.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if what you're saying, that there's always going to be a better substitute in the plant-based world.
Don't even think of it as a substitute. Don't even think of it as a substitute. It should be our source to begin with. What we did is we circumnavigate. We went around what nature was giving us, and we're getting it secondhand through the animal's digestive system, through the whole processing of animals. We could have gotten it straight from the source to begin with if we would have known, if we would have had the education to know our bodies and physiology. So think of it like that it's not a substitute. It's actually the true source, because it's the source that animals are getting it from.
That's what we should have been using all along. Just like sugars. Just like we found out with sugars, all along there were so many other alternatives that we should have been using to begin with, and due to corrupt forces, we always
because it became mechanized, it became monetized, everything became industrialized, and so everything was just processed and over-processed, processed the shit out of it for maximum output with minimal amount of time, and using the most cost-effective methods. And that's the problem, is that we're in a monetary system that will always lead to corruption and unethical practices, because the incentive is not ethical. It's not moral. The incentive is profit. So that's why in Biopan, that's why we support the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement so much, because doing away with the monetary system and transitioning to a resource-based economy is really the only answer for saving our civilization from destroying itself.
I learned just recently that flaxseed, if you boil flaxseed, you get some kind of gelatinous material. So who knows? Maybe that gelatin could be used instead of.
Actually, I think the chickpea sauce, you can take what's in a can of chickpeas, and you use that as a thickening agent, and you can use it in baking and stuff like that. I wonder what the what the nutritional value is of that stuff. It's that kind of viscous fluid that's in a can of cooked boiled chickpeas. So that might be one of your answers right there. But I'm sure, I'm almost positive. I mean, there's nothing that nature doesn't provide, because nature created us, so it knows exactly what we need. We just need to get back in touch with nature and stop exploiting and oppressing other aspects of nature. Yeah, especially those that can think and feel and suffer to the same degree that we do.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I'll give you my final question. Although we can continue to talk after that, but it's just the final question that I have written down. And hopefully other vegans hear this and can comment on it. I've heard that there are some vegans, some people who would not pluck a piece of fruit from its branch before it comes to full term. So they want it to fully grow and develop. Are you opposed to, they want to wait until it naturally falls and hits the ground before they actually harvest it. So are you opposed to pulling a potato out of the ground or plucking an apple off of a branch and eating it? Is it that extreme for you that you feel that it's necessary to let it come to full term, and that there's a perceiving entity? Like you and I would probably agree that to some degree there is an entity that is has some degree of, fundamental awareness. But do you think it's actually necessary to wait for it to finish its term and fall off the tree naturally?
I have no problems answering this question, guys, but I want to counter this with a more important question. In light of the atrocities that are being committed right now to our bodies, to the planet, and most importantly, to other animals, is this really a pressing issue? Is this really that?
I don't think so.
Okay. I'll answer the question. I have no problems answering the question, but I want you to think about this for a minute.
Yeah, my point was the reason why I was asking the question.
Not from you, but
because when I started hearing people mention that, it got me thinking, wow, how extreme are vegans taking this? So that's really the only reason why I'm asking, because I'm trying to find out how extreme you are personally.
What's more extreme than smashing a baby piglet on the concrete, because it's considered useless, killing it, castrating it without anesthesia? How extreme is that? Like electrocuting, stunning pigs, using bolt guns, or in supposedly humane forms of slaughter like halal and kosher and whatever, where they're stuck in this machine and they're twisted upside down and their throats are slit, and it's horrible and it's disgusting, dude. Yeah. No, the carnists are the extreme ones, man. Vegans are saying, let's eat plants, let's do no harm. Okay, let's save the environment, let's heal our bodies. There's nothing extreme about that. That's normal. That's balance.
Right. I was trying to find out,
there's a huge spectrum. When we're against brutality, when we're against cruelty, like it's the ones who are inflicting the cruelty are the ones who are absolutely self-absorbed and greedy and corrupt and extreme. So just consider that. But I will answer your question.
I didn't mean to get you offensive or defensive.
I'm not offensive. I'm not offended. Don't worry
or upset.
I'm passionate.
Okay. I was trying to show you that there's this spectrum. And I'm trying to find out, one, where you fall on the spectrum, because there are vegans who will refuse to pluck an apple until it comes to full term. And I personally would never take it to that extreme level. Like if I'm trying to become vegan.
I think what you're talking about, Guyus, is Jainism. What you're actually talking about is Jainism, where they won't pull the root vegetables out by the roots, and they feel like it disturbs the plant. They won't use root vegetables, or they won't pull from the tree like that until it falls. They'll eat it once it's fallen to the ground.
Right.
Which that's just taking the idea of do no harm, to that level. I'm not going to say it's extreme. I'm not going to say it's anything. I'm just saying that, like, use common sense.
I would personally view that as a little beyond what should be expected of us humans. Like, I think that's taking it to a level that is. I hate to use the word ridiculous, but because it's going to offend some people. But
guys, listen. The tree produces fruit to spread its seeds. Correct? It's producing the fruit to spread its own seeds, and actually, fruit trees have evolved alongside us in a symbiotic relationship. So as we eat the fruit, we digest it. The seeds, we defecate out the seeds, and then they're planted in other various places. That's why fruit trees have the bright colors. The fruit has the bright colors that it does, and our eyes are receptive to those colors. Our eyes actually evolved in concert with the fruit trees, because there was a symbiotic relationship. So taking a piece of fruit from a fruit tree, okay, is the fruit tree still alive? Is it still growing? Does it have more fruit? Of course. So now if you completely strip it and you don't allow it to grow, this is any form of botanist. Any botanist would know this. You don't just take all. You always leave some of the fruit. You always leave some of its leaves so that it can continue to regenerate. And you use what it's offering, but you allow it enough space and light and water, and you nurture it. So it's all about balance, man. And I'm saying, picking from a fruit that's not ripened or hasn't come to fruition, it's just kind of silly. Like it's no big deal, because there's 100 other fruit hanging there, and also it's giving away its fruit. That's what it's doing. It's also it doesn't have a fucking brain and a spinal cord and a nervous system to say, ouch, that hurt. What are you doing? This isn't like Sausage Party. You see that movie, Sausage Party? It's not like
it sounds like you and I.
Where all the vegetables and the food is alive, and they're like feeling that they're torturing things.
It sounds like you and I would be on the same page then, because I think that is silly too. I think that's taking it too far. But there are vegans out there who are very passionate about it, and they think that
I've never met one that's even brought that up. But I've heard it spoken of in Jainist cultures and communities.
Clint is one. He had on his. I saw somewhere where he wrote, that it was either disappointing that people pull a potato from the ground before it's like that's. I don't know if he viewed it as cruel. I can't remember what his exact statement was.
This is weird because Clint is very, very well balanced, and he's much more concerned with animal life. So are you sure he wasn't using some kind of analogy? Because
I wish Clinton was here because I'd love to ask him a question.
We're still waiting for him.
I've heard different things. Like I've heard about this before in the past, not just when I saw his comment in a feed somewhere or on his Facebook page, but I had heard about this some years back where people literally did not want to eat fruit unless it had fallen to the ground. And then some people even took it further than that. I can't remember what it was. Like they were waiting for it to actually start to spoil before they would eat it. So I think
what you're talking about is Jainism, which is an extreme form of ahimsa, the do no harm philosophy, the concept. And the Jains basically, they take it to the extreme where some will wear like a mesh over their mouth so they don't inhale and kill certain bugs. They'll sweep the ground in front of them so they walk, they don't step on it. Yeah. That's not what we're talking about, man. Veganism is much more practical than you're
wait
thinking.
A minute now.
These are extreme examples of taking an aspect of veganism, of doing no harm, and taking it to the extreme.
Wait a minute. You say we are not talking about that. Now you're encapsulating all vegans, and some might take offense to that. They might think, no, I do take it to that level. Like when we walk on the grass or when we kill the fleas on our dog or kill the ants that crawl into our kitchen.
I've had all these conversations before. We've specifically talked about ants, lice, bed bugs, cockroaches. We talk about all this stuff, man. It's
that doesn't cheapen the fact that I need to ask them, though, does it?
No, not at all. But I just want you to know that it's very, very common in the beginning stages of someone transitioning into veganism because they're trying to apply it. They're trying to apply it on a universal scale.
Yeah, I'll be the first to admit that I'm new to this, and I'm trying to introduce certain thoughts to get certain answers.
I have no problems answering the question, but you're kind of missing the point. The point is the harm that we know is being caused by animals that are suffering, that we know are under horrible conditions and living out their lives in just disgusting, abhorrent, it's awful.
I know.
We know that's occurring, so that's what we're trying to minimize and avoid and abolish. That's the point.
You're missing my point. My point is I'm trying to find out where the average vegan lies and where you personally lie and where I'm going to find myself on the spectrum. So that's why I'm asking some of these questions.
Let's put it this way. I've associated with hundreds of vegans, and some of these things have never come up. I've heard them discussed only by people who are in transition into becoming vegans. But vegans themselves, the majority, and I can tell you honestly, I have a good cross-section, perspective.
That will be helpful. That will be helpful.
Yeah. We've never talked about this, but what we do end up opposing and having to continuously argue is the plants have feelings too argument, okay?
Right.
And this is very important. This is notable. It needs to be said. Like carnists or people who are questioning or contesting the vegan movement or the vegan philosophy continuously say, okay, well, plants have feelings too. Well, they're also sentient, and we can talk to them, and they can respond to things. And obviously that's true. All life is aware on a certain level, has a level of awareness, but that awareness goes up in gradients in terms of levels of consciousness. And so, like if we know that plants literally don't have a nervous system, don't have these complex nerve endings to feel the same level of psychic, emotional, and physical suffering and pain, then it's absolutely ludicrous that we shouldn't be eating them. Okay, and then at the same time, you're still, even if you think that you care about plants, the meat industry, the meat and dairy industry actually is detrimental to plants and is using up so much farmland and the deforestation and completely just raping the earth for the sake of taste and tradition and convenience. So it doesn't make any sense. You take an idea and then you apply it in an abstract way, and then you apply it to the extreme, and it's really just a stupid, silly argument. I'm not saying you're doing this, guys, but I'm saying this is what we hear. It's really just an argument. It's not a practical, logical, well thought out response, but that's what we get all the time. So I just want to make that, we want to be careful about that.
Right.
Like, you know, we don't consider plants sentient in a general sense. I actually believe they are sentient,
well, when you
but
say
I also believe that sentience happens in stages and levels. So
when you say
on their level of sentience, they are not suffering when we eat them, and grass does not scream when we cut it. It continues to grow, and it's not a form of life that's developed that has the capacity to suffer, because it doesn't have the same capacity to think.
Right.
It just operates sort of instinctually. So
okay, you and I would be in full agreement on that, because I don't think they do either. I don't think they suffer in any appreciable way that should cause us to avoid eating them even before.
I forgot the most important point. Okay, so you're right. Plants have feelings, and plants suffer. Now, what do we eat? What do we eat, jackass? Okay, smartass. We're not going to eat We're not eating animals, and you don't want us to eat plants. We're saying don't eat animals, and you don't want us to eat plants either. So what the hell do we eat? We're not breatharians. We can't absorb the energy from the sun.
Yeah.
You know, yet we haven't evolved to that stage yet. So what the hell are you proposing? What is the alternative? You have there's no place to go from this argument. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Those extreme vegans that I was telling you about, what they would tell you is that wait for it to either fall from the tree or wait for it to actually start to spoil before you start to eat it. Like, they're okay with you actually finally eating it. It's all timing with them. You know, they want to wait for it to be at a certain stage.
Do what's practical. I don't believe. I think that there is a level of exploitation of jungles and forests and environments. Absolutely. And when you look at it, there, like, say, Christmas tree lots, for example. I think that there is kind of this mechanized, cold, sterile idea of just rows and rows and rows of what we do to trees, basically, where we and this kind of gets into paganism and druidry, where we rip it out of the ground, we transplant it, we grow it, and we grow it just for a specific aesthetic purpose, and then we throw it outside and we leave it on the curb, and then it just dies. I feel like that's very wasteful and disrespectful to the life.
I do too.
So
yeah, I've always thought so.
There is something to be said to honoring and respecting vegetation and plant life and trees, you know, just any gardener, any botanist, anyone who grows things and is familiar with this, they care for their garden and they care, and that they'll talk to their plants. And my grandma used to talk to her plants, and there are studies that show that plants they communicate based on you know, electrical impulses and things like that. It's not the same. Obviously, it's not on the same level as an animal. Okay, but at the same time, we must respect that it's also an aspect of life. It's kind of like, here's a good analogy. My hair, right? My hair doesn't really feel pain, but when I pull on it, I feel the pain, right? Uh-huh. And my hair on my head, I can cut it, and I can cut it or I can burn it, right? And it doesn't scream, and the hair itself doesn't feel pain. But in a sense, it's still connected to my body, right? And if I'm like ripping out my hair, it's hurting me, and I don't know. So like, you can cut off your hair and then you can keep a braid and use it for something, and that piece of hair by itself doesn't have a mind and a brain, so it's not missing being close to my scalp, so to speak, right? But at the same time, just think of it. It is connected. It is all connected, and it's part of a greater whole. So I think what needs to be remembered, and we need to remind ourselves here in a practical way, is that plants and vegetation are part of a larger system, part of a greater whole, okay? And they make up a very important, you know, intrinsic part of this of these processes, of this cycle. So we should respect it. And that's I don't like actually seeing, you know, trees being, you know, cut down because those trees become homes for other little organisms. All kinds of, there's a whole ecosystem involved there, and they represent, you know, shelter and food for so many other life forms. So we got to remember that we're in a system that it's a systems model, that everything's interconnected. So from that perspective, we take what we need and we don't abuse, and we don't over harvest, and we don't exploit, and we always give back. So keep that mentality, and you can answer all these questions yourself, you know?
Yeah, I was just hoping to find out where you fell within that spectrum, whether or not you were on the far extreme ridiculous end, and it sounds like you're not, which is reassuring for me, because I personally thought when I read that vegans were taking that approach, I was like, oh, wow, that's extreme. And I was curious whether or not Poffo, whether you took that same extreme position, but it sounds like you don't.
So, isn't it funny? But isn't it funny that just like a hearsay, just a rumor, or just maybe a few examples of something could be enough to deter someone from doing one of the most important things they could ever do in their life? Yeah. Isn't it amazing that just – and here's a good example.
Well, I would like to think that most people would know that was extreme. I would like to think that.
It depends on your own level of common sense, and you have good judgment, then you just dismiss it. And you're like, that's just stupid. That's silly. There's much more important aspects to this that are clearly beneficial and hold very great weight and importance ethically. So here's a good example. Soy milk. Soy, has estrogen, and it makes you grow titties, and you're a man, and so – holy shit, I don't want to grow boobs. I don't want if I drink soy milk, if I eat too much tofu, I'm going to grow nipples and my masculinity is being challenged. That was enough to get millions of people away from the idea of consuming soy.
Yeah.
And it was completely misunderstood. It was sort of marketed that way, probably I think because of through the meat and dairy industry was put some of these rumors out there, or someone who was sort of pro animal product probably and against vegetarianism and veganism as it was starting, and they put it out there, and so it swayed millions of people, and they're like, oh, I can't drink soy milk because it'll give you boobs. Well, I mean, we know that the estrogen that's in there is not the kind of estrogen that leads to the kind of hormonal imbalance in male physiology. So it's just a rumor, just a myth, but look at how powerful that is and how it can completely sort of warp and misrepresent the facts about the situation.
Yeah, again, there are those negative forces again that we got to fight against. All the misinformation, disinformation that's just constantly polluting everything. And I mean everything. It's peppered everywhere. Even in textbooks, it's peppered.
Oh yeah, totally. You gotta learn, you gotta cross-reference everything, you gotta do the research yourself.
Yeah,
you got to do the research. You got to really double check stuff. And oh, look, it looks like Clint's on right now. Let's see if we can get him.
Oh, he missed all my questions.
He's on, but it doesn't look like he's answered any of my my messages. It's weird.
A
bunch of I can't go on Facebook.
We'll have to ask him about the potato. We'll have to ask him about the potato.
He's responding. Hold on. Oh, he just woke up. I don't even see. That's why morning there right now.
That's why I thought it would be good to do this at 8:00 because I knew he would be waking up right about now.
Are you still down? You got enough energy to talk? I mean, you feel good?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go a little bit longer. I got to go eat eventually, but I can still go. At least I'd like to ask him about the potato.
The great potato question. This is the most important issue here. Like what I really want to discuss, we're going to have to do it, I guess, another time, is the connection with pantheism and veganism.
Well, we can do a little bit of that too.
Yeah, like that was the real subject that I wanted to address.
All you need to do is consider a rock rolling down a hill, and if you do that, you can. No, I'm kidding.
Have you heard that? How many times that Trick brings up the damn rock rolling down the hill? Oh.
I'm making fun of Trick. That was my joke.
He says maybe in a couple hours.
Oh my God, a couple of hours.
Hold on, I'm responding.
You didn't plan this very well.
No, dude, I've been trying.
See, a couple of hours would have been perfect for me because that's what I was saying. 8:00 my time. That would have been in a couple of hours. That would have been perfect. Man, he could have helped answer all these questions.
I'm sorry, I didn't answer them, effectively for you.
Well, I think you did. You did a pretty good job on really filling in some questions I had actually.
I'm gonna see if I can just get him to join us right now and just for a little while.
I wish Chandler could have, been a part of it.
Yeah, Chandler. I don't even know, man. He's got to go eat dinner with his mom. Even though, this is one of the most important podcasts we've been trying to do forever. He's got his weird obligations.
Yeah, I would have liked to have had his input.
Yeah, Chandler's is pretty simplistic about his understanding of stuff. I mean, he really keeps it very simple and matter of fact, you know.
Yeah, but sometimes that can be a good thing, very direct.
No, it is a good thing, but he also has no understanding. I don't want to say that. Let me just generalize. He really doesn't have an understanding of pantheism, of what the difference is between an atheist and a pantheist. Our first 2 shows were about that, just the difference between an atheist and a pantheist. He really doesn't understand. He understands pantheism, but he doesn't understand why you have to call it pantheism
Well, I thought he was gaining an understanding.
The religious experience with the spiritual experience, because he's an ex-Christian.
I thought he was finally gaining an understanding of that through you.
He is, but very slowly, because I'm his only influence, because George is a pantheist as well, but he's more of a philosophical pantheist. I don't really know what his – I mean, to him, he views the universe as God, but we sort of clash on some of our ideologies, our doctrine. I don't know, but yeah, like in terms of the kind of pantheism that wants to, that sees the practical application of it, in terms of life and societies and the evolution of our species. I'm not saying that George isn't concerned about those things as well. That's why he's so all about the free will topic. But I just don't really understand. I think he's more of a theist or a deist, or actually he's more of a panentheist. He is like a panentheist,
right,
combined with with a panpsychist view of things, which to me is kind of irrational and not practical. I don't think there's evidence for it. It's a misunderstanding of this idea that there is levels of awareness. He thinks that everything is conscious. Doesn't really believe in evolution, thinks that evolution is being guided by some outside force, and that there's more to God than just the physical universe, and that there may be an afterlife. And so I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that, that's none of that has anything to do with pantheism. Pantheism is, love and appreciation for nature, respect for the natural world, recognizing that the only true divinity is all around us, is in nature, and for me specifically in our biology, that's where the focus should be. So a lot of people are sort of philosophical and intellectual pantheists, but they don't seem to apply it, on every level like you and I have. So
who do you think? Do you think you and Clint equally know about veganism?
Yeah, and actually Clint was probably vegan longer than I was.
So we really should have had some Clint.
Hold on, let me just send him this link and see if he'll join us.
All right. I'm surprised you tried to initiate this so early with Chandler when I thought you were originally going to do it on your podcast.
Yeah, because Chandler is he has to go do stuff in the evening. He's not good in the evenings, and he goes
but I thought it was going to be on your podcast. I thought it was going to be your podcast.
We just decided to start a Google Hangout, and then we're gonna edit this, and we might even split it up into 2 different shows. So the latter half of this could be for my show, the beginning could be for his show, or we could use the whole thing and just cut out some of the.
Yeah, but you took the chance of not getting Clint in by going in so early. Yeah,
but I was also trying to hurry up and get you, because I saw you on, and I was also trying to take advantage of Chandler's availability. Okay. So it was just a question of trying to get everybody on this, on the same page at the same time.
Plus, you were excited.
No, I'm chill. I'm not.
No, I mean you were excited to, you were motivated to.
Oh yes, it's important. I've been trying to do this for a long time. I wanted to answer these questions you have.
Yeah, I was anxious to give them. I was anxious to ask.
And I want to make this connection. It's so important, because I'm more involved in vegan groups now than I am in pantheist groups. And so there's this thing that their spirituality runs across the board. So you've got Buddhists, you've got Christians, you've got atheists, agnostics, a lot of New Agers, you've got pagans in there. In the vegan groups, and I'm saying no. There is a belief system that fundamentally leads to pantheism. So help me promote it. probably don't even realize that you're already a pantheist. When I actually describe pantheism, especially biopan, to them, they're like, that's what I already believe. That's exactly what I believe. Yeah, man, that makes sense. Yeah. Like, so what I'm trying to do is just raise the awareness and educate and sort of consolidate these two movements, because veganism is so powerful. Oh, he says, I can't right now. I have to drop my kids off at school.
That's a shame.
All right, we'll just try again later with him. Let me just get off of here. Anyway, so okay, let's shift for just a little bit and talk about pantheism and the connections and
I'm ready to do that.
How the two are intermingled. If you have any more questions,
nope, I'm ready.
Veganism.
I'm ready to do as you suggest.
Okay.
Should we wait and save that for when Clint gets on, or
let's talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
Because we can do that, because actually, see, it's an interesting dichotomy, because Chandler is a vegan, but he's not a pantheist.
Huh.
Clint is a pantheist and a vegan. You are a pantheist who's just become a vegan, and I'm a vegan pantheist and a biopan, and I've got this complete ontology that incorporates all of these things together.
Yeah.
So it's like I wanted Clint there because he represents, pantheism and veganism for you and for Chandler, to help him learn a little more about pantheism. I wanted Chandler and Clint here for you so that you could learn a little bit more about veganism. You follow me?
Yes.
And I wanted all of us to get together, because that's what I'm trying to do with biopan.
Yes.
So okay, you've been a pantheist probably longer than anybody I've known. Actually, you're probably one of the first pantheists I ever met, honestly. And you never necessarily made this connection about treating other life forms with kindness and respect, even though you treated the life forms in your vicinity, in your life, with kindness and respect. It was just a cultural conditioning that these animals are for food. You never stopped and thought that a pig has feelings, that a pig is suffering, that a baby calf is being ripped away from its mother. You weren't aware of the conditions of factory farming and things like that. So but now once you've been educated, you're willing to make that transition, and it makes perfect sense. So let me ask you, this is the point. If you really, really understood pantheism, and you just had this general understanding, a core understanding of pantheism in a practical, applicable way, wouldn't it necessarily lead to the vegan lifestyle? Or you don't have to call it the vegan lifestyle, but a lifestyle that seeks to minimize suffering and
well, it depends.
And is anti-slavery and is pro symbiotic relationships instead of an exploiting relationship. Like
it depended. It depended on my getting additional information, which, thanks to those documentaries, and I plan to do more research to confirm some of the claims that they made. But one of the things that I say to myself a lot is that there are necessary evils in life. There is unfortunately suffering and pain in the universe, in life. So some of it is necessary and has to be tolerated, and I'm aware of this. And it's sad. I don't like it. I wish it wasn't so. I wish.
Stop, guys. If you wish it wasn't so, then make it so. That's
no. You're not.
If
you're not
you wish
understanding.
It wasn't so, then we should have the mentality as human beings, as the most influential organism on this planet, to try and make it so. That's it. In terms of ideals.
Hang on. Let me talk. Whenever I believe that there are things that we can do to improve and to prevent suffering, yes, I'm on board. Like I said, I have to be fully informed, and find out if something is necessary or appropriate, to try to prevent. But for example, I wouldn't try to save all the fleas on my dog. That's taking it too far.
You're getting back to the thing of balance.
But again, in terms of pantheism, I have this understanding that unfortunately suffering is a part of the universe, and pain is a part of the universe, and unfortunate outcomes are a part of the universe and always will be.
That's a very mature attitude, a very mature outlook.
Yeah, and so I'm just constantly
our scale. Just because of our scale, we end up stepping on and killing and harming other things. Just because we're bigger than other things, That
in fact, I actually forgot to ask you a question, and it's paralleling with what we're talking about right now. So I'll just go ahead and ask that. Do you believe, as I do, that even if we succeeded in turning everyone into a happy vegan on this particular planet, that there are an infinite number of planets throughout the universe where its inhabitants have not reached that potentially advanced stage, as we humans might define it, and therefore there will always be an infinite number of planets out there where animal cruelty and suffering is going on, including animal slaughter for its flesh? That's one thing that I personally can't escape as the worldview that I have and the type of pantheistic view that I have, because I believe the universe is infinite and constantly cycling. So no matter what area you try to encapsulate and alter and fix and enhance, there will always be the infinite cycle. So there's always going to be an infinite number of planets where they haven't reached that stage yet. And so there's always going to be pigs and cows being tortured and slaughtered out there, and it's I hate to even think about it.
Cows, there'll be some other life form, but yeah, I get it.
Right. And it's sad.
Guys, you want me to answer it? Let me answer it.
But right quick, I even believe in a duplication of what it would be so similar, such a copy that it basically there are pigs and cows, even Poffo. Even Poffo's, the copies of Poffo. So there's this, in one sense it's sad, but at the same time, we need to go ahead and continue as vegans to try to put into the infinite wheel, so to speak, the infinite story. You want to go ahead and insert the improvements so that way there can be an infinite number of improvemements, so it's kind of
we're representing a level of evolution and cognitive awareness.
Yeah.
Okay, that can then be, spread and multiplied and transferred, like as you said, like infinitely, like exponentially.
Hey guys,
I got a lot I want to say to that. What's up, Chandler?
See, Chandler.
Hey, I'm back, guys. Are you guys still talking?
Man, we're on this is such an important topic. We covered a lot of stuff, but
I'm so glad, man. Yeah, because it was getting interesting. But see, the thing is, back at 2, I had really thought I would be doing a couple of hours with you back then. But then we didn't have Guyus join us until it was already like 4:20 or something. So that's what happened. And then,
so how long is Joe right now? But he's got to go. He's got to go take his kids somewhere. So actually, Clint can join us later. This may be an all-day thing, and we'll just break it up into like 5 different episodes.
Yeah, well, see, here's the thing. Yeah, so, because I go to bed at 8 tonight. But yeah, and see, what we can do is we can extract any of the audio we want, any part of it to use. Yeah. And so I'm curious to listen to what I missed you guys talked about while I was gone.
Do you want to join us right now? Because there's a really important thing we're getting to right now. Do you want to join us right now?
Yeah, sure. I can talk to you for a few minutes right now. That's fine.
Go ahead, guys. What were we going to say? Guys?
I was just going to say Poffo got a little inflamed, a little reactionary with me earlier, but it's all still good.
No. You just don't know me. That's just passion, man. I'm passionate about the ideas and what I'm talking about. It's
not to get a little defensive, though. You got a little defensive, like you thought I was attacking you. No,
when?
Okay. Hey,
if I don't remember you, if I don't think that, then that's you projecting it, buddy.
We got it on tape. We recorded it.
I just get loud. The Rican in me,
Yeah, Poffo gets loud and just goes on these long rants where he won't shut up all the time. I'm used to it.
This is really important. Okay, listen, I'm going to do it right now. This is really important. Guyus is saying, in effect, I got to answer him first, and then we'll talk about it some more. But Guyus, what you're saying is analogous to saying, well, since I can't convert my family, since I live in a culture that's more, meat oriented with in terms of their traditions and stuff, and since I won't really be able to reach everybody, in my state or in my neighborhood, then what's the point? It's kind of discouraging because we're never really going to be able to make a difference. So
no, I said the opposite. Yeah. I said. But
the mentality can lead to that thinking that way, thinking it's an overwhelming, insurmountable task.
It's just a reality that I can't deny. But
you don't understand. But you're not. But you're missing the reality that it's also omnia, nature, the all, the forever all, that is coming to this conclusion that harming other beings is wrong. So if we've come to this conclusion,
I know we have. Yes, I know we have. Mm-hmm. And like I said, we should always try to do what's right and promote correctness, to insert that into the wheel of life, I said, the story, so that way we can have infinite copies of the positive. But I was saying it'll never negate my awareness that there is the negative, the infinite series.
But that's not the important thing. You're looking at it in terms of absolutes, that everything has to be this way. Don't you understand that the entire purpose of existence is the growth process? It's the experiential process of learning this stuff. That's why nature is
I agree.
This learning.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so and during that process, bad shit happens.
Yeah, I agree.
What he basically said, Chandler, Guyus was saying, well, okay, even if we make the whole world turns vegan, there's still going to be other planets and other solar systems out there, other galaxies and other civilizations that are still harming and abusing other animals. So we're never going to be able to completely eliminate suffering because the universe is expanding infinitely. It's infinite in his model. It's infinite. Correct. So how can we we'll never be able to veganize the universe. So so it's a little bit like discouraging. We have to have some level of acceptance that there's always going to be pain and suffering. And I say right now, who do you think you are? I don't think you know who you really are. Because if you're a pantheist, that means you're God, buddy. You are a representation of the divine. You have the authority and the power and the influence, okay, to make a difference, to change things for the better. So I don't think you realize that, as a pantheist, what we represent when we combine veganism with pantheism, we represent the ethical, moral conscience of God. We are the conscience of God that has just now come into fruition, into awareness. So what's impossible for you? There's nothing that's impossible for you. The human race can do this.
Okay, hold on now. Okay, now I would actually like to respond.
We can do this. All I'm saying is we can do this. We have the potential.
Okay, now, but this is also true that we will also never be able to stop all the suffering in all the universe. It's true. This is and way I would like to say it, I wouldn't say that this is something we have to accept. In fact, I don't accept it. I reject it because I don't like it. But I must acknowledge that this is a fact, and so our focus should not be on, oh no, we can't fix everything. We can't stop all the suffering and veganize the universe. But we can always do the best we can and look at how far we've come from where we were.
Right.
If we have transformed and we have changed and we've evolved to this level, we are a microcosm, a reflection of the macrocosm. That means I do believe that on a universal scale we will eventually come together and all beings will unite. I believe this. I believe this is part of the whole process. I don't think that we should ever accept that this is a necessary part of it. And Trick would agree. And you normally agree, Chandler. So I'm not sure why you're disagreeing now, except there has to be someone who's acting contrary.
Well, here's the deal: is you make it sound like we, like that we have the potential to fix everything, and we don't.
We as human beings, or we as life? No, when I say we, I'm speaking of life itself, biological organisms. I'm saying nature manifested as conscious life. Whether it might not happen on our planet, we might destroy ourselves, we might kill ourselves. I mean, life as a whole, overall.
Yeah, that distinction is important, Poffo, because as individual humans, no, we cannot. But as life collectively, yes, in time that may happen.
That's what I'm speaking of, and what I'm saying is that, on a universal grand scale, this is what all of life is evolving to do. It's learning to love and accept itself. It's seeing itself as valuable. That's what veganism and pantheism represents. Seeing itself as valuable, and we're just a tiny, small sliver of a fraction of that process that's come to that realization, and we can make a difference on this planet. And let's start with this planet first.
I believe that we can never fully eradicate corruption or the dark side, but we can at least maintain a healthy balance. And there are times when we can push a little beyond that balance, but when we do, the opposing forces are going to go against us. But again, I believe that we should always strive and struggle to do the right thing and what we think is correct and best for us and the environment and the planet.
Those opposing forces, guys, aren't they just there to oppose and sort of help to cultivate the positive side? Those opposing forces are there, which are actually creating the positive pushback. So in a sense, life and death, so to speak, if you want to generalize it as a metaphor like this, that like death is a part of life, and through death comes more life. So honestly, it's not that death and life are equal. Life trumps all, and death is just a means by which more life is propagated and
I just wanted you to know that I do believe that there will always be the yin and the yang involved, that there will never be a place where we will live happily ever after. There's never a state that will be where we eradicate all
getting yang is only necessary. Huh? It's only necessary if contrast, what you're speaking of is contrast. Contrast is only necessary for experience. Once we move and we evolve beyond, and I'm talking millions and millions of years, I'm talking when we just become pure consciousness. When we evolve to become pure consciousness, that experiential differential advantage or that contrast is no longer necessary. Like we can literally reshape our environments. We can reshape matter because we are matter. We are the matter, and once we recognize it and evolve to that point, there will no longer be a need for that contrast. We will have balance and true homeostasis, and then we'll get tired of it, and we'll go right back to this.
I believe that even in our dreams, there are rules and there are laws, and those laws shape our reality, and what the synopsis of that reality will always be, no matter what, is the yin and the yang. That you can never escape that. You can never go outside that rule.
No, but did you hear what I said in terms of physical form, in terms of physical existence? You can't escape contrast. It's necessary. But once all things have assimilated and all things are one, there will be no more contrast. There will just be bliss and a continuum of exploration and experience of the self. And then eventually there'll be.
I don't believe that extreme. You're describing an extreme, and I just in my personal views, I believe that it's impossible to achieve the ultimate extreme. That nature always pushes back and violently, if necessary, and will prevent us from achieving ultimate extreme.
And let me ask you, why does nature do that?
I think it has no choice but to do that. It's a mechanism that, because I've studied it, and I noticed that nature always prefers balance or to push things towards equilibrium. And it's like asking, why is a square, or why does it have four corners? It just does.
The equilibrium you're talking about is one of the goals. One of the goals is also this personal experience as it is right now. But the other goal, what dark matter is trying to do. While dark energy is ripping everything apart, dark matter is holding everything together. It's trying to consolidate. It's trying to unite. It's trying to solidify itself.
But there are always forces that will never allow it to fully achieve consolidation, in my view.
For the sake of, I agree with you. Okay, here this is about language. I agree with you in terms of this physical universe. That's exactly how this physical universe will always work. What I'm talking about, the evolution, the apotheosis I'm talking about, is what goes beyond this physical experience.
But I don't think our experience can ever be removed from that. It's like trying to say you can have a triangle without corners. You can't.
You know what?
They go hand in hand.
This may get into just sort of vain over philosophizing. I don't know if it's as relevant or important as but Trick and Chandler actually, Trick especially talks about this, about uploading our consciousness into like a synthetic form, and George is all about the bliss pill and trying to get people to not feel any pain whatsoever, and even Chandler wants to sort of you've said it at times that if you could eliminate all pain and suffering, or cause people to get violently ill and sick when they cause harm and suffering to others, like a Clockwork Orange effect.
That way they'd be deterred and they would automatically be reprogrammed to no longer cause that harm.
Have you seen Clockwork Orange, guys?
Yes.
Okay, so you remember what they did to Alex, right? Chandler wants to do that.
It's been several years. Are you talking about where they held his eyes open, or
right? And they fed him intravenously the poison that made him sick while he was observing scenes of violence, and so it deterred him from doing violence. That's what Chandler wants to do. But you talk about like an Orwellian nightmare. But a Trick and these other guys, they believe in transhumanism and getting away from the physical form. They believe the physical body is a bad thing, and that because it's a sort of it's a progenitor for something that could be greater, that we could sort of engineer a greater level of existence where there is peace. And even if it's a simulation, they talk about creating a simulation all the time and just living in a simulation.
I don't even know if such a thing is actually possible, but theoretically it sounds like a good idea. Like, imagine if your consciousness could be uploaded into a machine, and you still had that experience. You had the pleasure of experience and learning new things, but you no longer lived in a biological life form. So you no longer felt pain. You no longer were hungry or thirsty. In
that sense, you do have exactly the kind of equilibrium and bliss that we're talking about. And I'm not saying it so that your physical body is like suffering somewhere, you're a slave, you're a battery like in the Matrix for the machines. I'm saying that consciousness itself is what supersedes all. It's the primary thing. So if that's your consciousness and that's your experience, that's life. And that is the experience of that organism. And so it's not a bad thing. I would just reject, and I would object to the idea of our bodies still being somewhere on Earth, somewhere in some cryogenic tank or something. Like I'm talking about the real you, who you are, literally just uploading into like a computer construct or something, like in Lawnmower Man. Yeah, I think that's totally plausible.
Here's an interesting question about the Matrix. Okay, this could get deep, but
I think guys want to say something. But can you hold your thought, guys? Or you want to say it?
Well, yeah, okay. I would just like to say that I've discussed that subject with my younger brother, a lot because it's one of our favorite topics, and uploading the consciousness. And don't forget what you were about to say, Chandler. But I came to the conclusion that I feel that there's always going to have to be the physical as a vessel to carry the perceiving mind. You can never divorce the perceiving mind from the physical. And I actually believe that one day we will achieve being able to transfer someone's perceiving mind from their human body to another vessel, I'll call it, because I don't want to call it a computer because that's going to cheapen what I'm talking about. And you're going to have to use a kind of organism or something that can at least
silicone,
be equivalent to that.
Silicone-based life forms are more durable.
It has to be, in order for the perceiving mind to still exist, not just be a copy of it or an imitation, but where that perceiving entity is experiencing and really there, it has to be part of a continuum. And in order to achieve that, you have to have some kind of biological mechanism, and a physical mechanism that is actually quite impressive, in terms of its processes. So if you can achieve that, and I believe it can be, you can transfer consciousness from one body or one vessel to another. But I don't believe you'll ever be able to achieve a state where you're in eternal bliss forever and ever. Mechanisms will start to take effect, whether it's nightmares or whatever. There are things that the universe...
Vanilla Sky. If you watch Vanilla Sky, that's what happened at the end of that movie, Tom Cruise.
It will. The universe will never allow someone to have eternal bliss for a continuous, nonstop duration. It's always going to find a way to contaminate that pleasure, because again, you and I, Poffo, has discussed this many times. We have to have displeasure to serve as a contrast in order to even experience pleasure.
A little bit of resistance. There needs to be a little bit of resistance. There needs to always be a little bit of challenge. I've discussed this on Chandler's show multiple times, and I've said it. He's you've heard me say it before, that there needs to be a distinction in order for the experience to happen itself. Even the memory of that distinction needs to be there.
Yeah,
but
and
we can do a lot to minimize the suffering and find more balance and more equilibrium.
Yeah, and even if you achieved getting that consciousness uploaded somewhere or whatever, it may start out in a blissful state, but eventually the mind will start to have dreams and start to experience displeasure.
What kind of mind? What kind of mind are we talking about? Are we talking about a human mind? Because at that stage and that level of development, the environment is completely changed. So we're talking about a completely different kind of. Remember,
right, I know.
We're a product of our environment. So
yeah, I was just talking about
a different mind.
Yeah, I was just talking about a perceiving mind, whether it's from a praying mantis or whatever, being transferred into something that was man-made in order to serve as a vessel. And yes, you're 100% right that there is going to be an alteration. There's going to be a change in the way that perceiving mind perceives. But it will eventually fall into a state of its own, mental universe where it's just like we do in dreams, where we experience pain, suffering, fear. Actually, the actual feeling of fear, for example, is also something that can never be truly divorced from the perceiving mind.
I don't agree.
In my worldview.
Way into the future it would happen. I don't agree, because if you have an environment where there is no pain and suffering, there's no knowledge of it, there's no memory of it. You have an instinctual drive to explore and seek out novelty, but you can outbreed those genetic imperatives to fight or flee or whatever. It can happen eventually. That's how we've domesticated animals. That's how we've domesticated wolves.
So are you trying to escape the yang?
No, I'm saying that evolution itself, in terms of the physical forms, physical bodies, will always operate based on that contrast. But the kind of apotheosis I'm talking about actually goes beyond it. But again, none of this is relevant to our everyday practical lives. But it stands to reason. These are fascinating subjects, and we are philosophers. The fact that our minds go this far and think about this stuff, we represent a level of thinking that most people don't generally engage in. Chandler, speak.
Yeah, so, you brought up, the Matrix, and, the Matrix was an interesting thing, because what I found problematic in that movie wasn't so much the fact that there was these people's bodies that were basically being batteries for this huge machine that generated this Matrix. What I found that was dumb about it is that their fictional world was nowhere near as good as I would have expected. Why couldn't it have been a nice, perfect world where there were no problems and no suffering in that?
Agent Smith said exactly what Guyus just said. He said, we tried it. We made an ideal utopian construct. The first Matrix was designed as an ideal world, and you rejected it. There's something in your nature that seeks out like resistance and conflict, he said whole crops were lost. That's exactly what Guyus just said, that's in the human nature. You're saying that it's not?
I don't think it is. I never bought that part of the movie. I thought that was bullshit. I really don't think that if you had a really, truly ideal world where people were living it, that they were rejected. What did he mean they rejected it?
I can quickly
rejected it. I'm saying that would happen right now.
Hey, I want to hear Guyus' take on this.
Yeah. It doesn't happen in the future. It won't happen in the future. It will happen right now because of the way human beings are made.
Stop it. Let me talk. Just kidding.
I agree with both.
But what I wanted to add was that that we will always have to deal with our own psyche. So let's just look at that in of itself. Our own psyche, our own thoughts, that, we're constantly trying to be our own therapist, our own coach, and to coach ourselves through life, and try to negotiate our emotions. And so even if we were placed into this matrix, we are still going to have to wig out on that reality, and we're going to have to, our brain is going to have to extrapolate things to fill in the holes, to fill in the missing blanks, so to speak. I mean, there's going to be, to some extent, something that can help facilitate that. To facilitate the harmony and the peacefulness and whatever conditions you want to try to create for it in order to comfort the perceiving mind. But there is still no escaping certain dark aspects of our psyche, certain dark corners that we're going to have to be forced to face and wrestle with and be confronted with. It's exactly why we have bad dreams, actually, because we're sort of the author of our dreams, but we always have such realistic negative expectations. Like if I find myself in a lake, I'll all of a sudden start sinking for some reason, because that's how our brains, through evolution, we've been so conditioned to recording sort of the synopsis of the universe, which is that yin-yang struggle that's always present, that we always have to deal with. And so it is so innate, even in our psyche, that we force ourselves to have such horrible, nightmares sometimes because of our expectations. Nothing ever happens. You ever try to have a positive dream, like especially if you realize that you're dreaming? I don't know if y'all have ever experienced that, where you're dreaming, and you try to prolong the positive aspects of the dream, and for me it never works because I start to have the phobia of, oh no, what if this happens, and what if, because I'm somewhat of a, we're all by nature to some degree pessimistic. We don't ever expect perfect things to unfold perfectly harmoniously, without flaw. So
I'm raising my hand
because our experience has shown us that they don't turn out that way.
Yes, exactly. Because of our experience, our real life experiences, since forever, that's what is so ingrained, and I can't see that our psyche can ever escape it.
Well, theoretically, maybe so, because here's the deal: that our psyche, as you call it, that's caused to be that way by our experiences. But if
I agree. That's the point.
Yeah.
Right?
So if we were in a different environment, even if it was some sort of a virtual fake environment or machine-generated environment, over time that psyche itself would change. I don't believe in any set human nature that's unchangeable, that will always have some part of that,
About lucid dreaming, I want to tell you something, guys. I have lucid dreams all the time, and when I become self-aware and cognizant in my dreams, I make them into whatever I want them to be. I transform whatever's in front of me, and I fly, and I can become whatever I want. And I know that I'm dreaming, and I'll jump off cliffs, and I have there's no fear whatsoever. So I actually disagree. I think that what's coming through is maybe a little bit of your own neurosis and your own experiences of life. No offense, but we all have that. I feel that way about everyday life, but when I know that I'm dreaming, I know that I'm in control of everything. And you bring up this point, and it's a beautiful thing because it segues to what I'm saying is that
I promise if you were to continue the dream and follow it throughout, you would eventually come across a negative outcome,
not
in some fashion.
But a challenge. No, a challenge. What this is the whole point of this. There's 2 points here. When I'm in this lucid state of lucid dreaming, okay, the problem I have is not that monsters will appear and whatever. I'm literally in control. I'm making it into a cool horror movie. It becomes like an adventure, and there's theme music and all this stuff, and I'm totally in control. The problem is focus.
Right.
I lose my focus, and I get hung up on the details, and I become obsessive because I'm obsessive compulsive. I become OCD in the dream about what weapon I'm going to use to fight the zombie, and I spend the entire dream trying to pick out the weapon.
Yes.
And
see, that's a good example.
This is why.
Distracted. It's not negativity. Okay. I just get distracted. So it's all about mental clarity and focus.
That's a good example.
Now I understand why Poffo doesn't need to play Minecraft. He has these dreams which are just about the same thing.
But see, that's a good example, Poffo, that you're doing what is in your true nature to do, because you're an analytical fella, and you like to overanalyze things sometimes, and so you're fulfilling that. You're playing that role out. Now, I didn't mean to give you the impression that when I have my lucid dreaming that I can't carry it out and have a good time and control things. I do that. But I don't know.
If you spent 24 hours more time in that state, if you spent more time in that state than you do in your waking state, you would learn to maintain a certain focus and a certain clarity of mind where you would be able to control and manipulate it much more.
But as I was explaining to Chandler, you're looking at it too fundamentally. I am talking about even on a level of dealing with our own psyche, our own emotional trauma, our own thought processes. We are always going to have to struggle and wrestle with those, with our own identity and our own view, our own worldview of this new reality, whatever. We're going to constantly have to deal with that. It's not going to be a picnic indefinitely. It's not going to be this pleasurable thing, because you're going to eventually be forced to face certain dark concepts about existence and reality, and sure, even have to.
I agree.
Okay.
No, I agree, but I think that there will always be the challenge, and we will create challenges for ourselves for the sake of experience, which is exactly the whole purpose of existence, right there. Yeah. But it's so beautiful because you're talking about dreams, and this is what I'm trying to tell you is that's what God is. That's what God is doing. God is this conscious mind. No, this unconscious mind that is becoming conscious through sentient, sapient life forms, and it's literally learning about itself. It's learning everything, but it's doing it for the sake of experience. And exactly your what you describe when you're dreaming and how you can be in control of everything. That's the level that we're going to get to in terms of reality. My cat is getting in front of it right now.
Yeah, I do believe and have thought along those lines that one day humans will reach a stage and a level where I used to imagine these huge spheres in space, man-made spheres, and they manipulate matter on the inside, and we create our own universe on the inside, and we control our own universe. I mean, even on a physical level, not just consciousness.
Do you believe in telekinesis? Have you heard any reports of telekinesis? Do you believe in psychic abilities like that?
Well, that depends on what level. You know,
do you believe it's possible? Do you believe it's possible to move and manipulate matter without physically touching it?
Damn. To an extent, our mind, like my conscious mind, is moving my arm right now, my physical arm.
There you go.
Yeah.
And if everything around us is really part of our body, and we come to that unified realization of that,
yes,
then that's telekinesis times 10 expanded outward, and now we're in control and we can manipulate matter.
But I keep trying to press.
When I talk telekinesis, I think Star Wars, like the Force, like Yoda lifting the spaceship out of the swamp, with the telekinetic powers. That kind of telekinesis is what I'm interested in.
But we're not. Yeah, no, that's the same thing. But we're not at that level yet. But the potentiality is there, because you guys are missing the fundamental point. If we're pantheists, everything is part of our body. We are part of everything. So if we can connect to that, like in the Matrix, remember he was able to.
Well, you know that I believe I'm one of the few pantheists that actually believe that not only is all of it God, but that I am that allness, that I am that summation of it all. But that still doesn't mean I control myself. In my personal view, I believe
not right now, but the potentiality.
I don't believe that can ever be achieved. That's what I was trying to. I keep trying to impress, that upon you, that there are these rules and laws of the universe, of that tapestry, that we have to follow, that we have to abide by, and we are sort of passengers, as perceivers along that, that path, in terms of our experience through the sequence of time and so forth. But I don't believe that we'll ever reach a stage where there's this absolute extreme unification where we control the totality of it all and we live happily ever after. And I not only do I not believe that that's possible, I don't think it should be. I don't think we should even, try to fully eliminate the yang aspect. We should always try to undulate gently through the positive and the negative.
Well, that's what we'll do. That's exactly the trajectory that we'll take. But guys, I don't like rules.
I know, but that's the universe. That's the universe. They're there.
I don't like being told what to do, and I don't like restrictions, and I don't like having boundaries on me. Okay, and what I'm trying to tell you is, the way that our bodies operate in a microcosmic sense is exactly the same thing. So when I choose with my volition, even though it's not a free will, my choice to move my hand, make a fist, okay, that's me communicating through electrical impulses through all the muscles and the veins and the tendons and to do what I'm doing, okay?
Yeah.
We'll be able to do the same thing once we recognize and coordinate with every other living system, because it's all moving through electrical.
I believe that can be
neural pathways and magnetic, magnetic repulsion and attraction.
Yes,
that's exactly how it works.
I believe that to a large extent, like I was saying earlier, that I do believe that humans can reach a stage and where they can incorporate their own technology and advance their own evolution and advance their control and manipulation of the physical world that makes us up. But again, 1 + 2 will always equal 3, and the pi of every circle will always be 3.14. So there are these rules that we do have to contend with, and these laws, like for every action.
As humans, sure, as humans, but we're not talking about humans anymore. We're talking about Homo intuitus.
I'm talking about for the universe as a whole. I'm talking about for the universe as a whole. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That will always hold true. That will never be negated. I don't care how unified we become.
Except on a quantum level, when you're near a black hole, all the physical laws break down, and you're no longer
as I've told you in the past, there are so many things about the quantum theories and black holes and dark matter that I totally disagree with. That's a lot of corruption at the top. That pushed those bogus ideas.
You think they're bogus
for unethical reasons?
Really?
You haven't watched that documentary that I asked you to watch.
No, I need to though. Remind me, and I'll watch it.
Yeah, you'll find out. It's like the corruption involved in the meat industry and in the dairy industry that actually happened at the university level and scientific journals. Everything that there are certain ideas and theories that were pushed, and certain people that got crushed if they tried to go against those traditional views.
Quantum mechanics against quantum theory?
There are certain aspects of quantum theory that I definitely disagree with, and as well as relativity, dark matter, and definitely the Big Bang.
Okay, so check it out. We can go like this forever. I don't know how much longer Chandler has.
Just real quick, just to put it in a nutshell, do I ever believe there's a condition where all the laws of the universe, of nature, can break down? No. I believe they are absolutely always in place, always will be in place.
I would just add to that when they appear to break down, it's just because they're exhibiting characteristics and traits that we've yet to understand, but those are also physical laws.
Okay, I will agree with that statement. I'll agree with that statement.
They break down according to our
interpretation, or the way we experience it.
Our personal experience right now, our current understanding of it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they're not natural laws. Okay, so we can go forever like this, but let's talk about something that while we have Chandler with us, because
by the way, I'm hearing an echo sometimes when Poffo talks. Guyus, are you hearing that? Like there's a slight echo?
So far, not on my end. I don't think so.
My voice resounds throughout the universe.
I have heard it before, where I think his speaker is up too loud or something.
I have my speakers off. I'm hearing my own echo, so it's got to be through one of you guys. My voice is reverberating through your speaker.
Oh, maybe I need to turn down mine. Let's see.
What I wanted to explore, what I wanted to get into now is about pantheism, because Chandler doesn't necessarily understand or agree, but at times he completely relates. So now you have an opportunity to speak to another pantheist, Chandler. And what's very important is I want to get away from the sort of the theological, metaphysical, concepts here, and just say what can be practically drawn from this. You're a pantheist, Guyus. What makes you different than an atheist or someone else out there? Why is pantheism significant? Let's just talk about that in a very general sense. Talk to Chandler.
Well, I'll tell you exactly what I think. I did a whole essay and video on this. One of the primary things is that atheists often view the universe as this random thing that just fortuitously happened to happen. It was a serendipitous thing. Whereas I view the universe as this fixed tapestry that has always existed and always will. And that tapestry is 100% responsible for the causation of my existence. I mean, it's constantly the causation of my existence from every moment. There is never a moment that it's not responsible for my existence. And I also believe there's a purpose to it all, a divine, it's embedded in that tapestry, kind of like the tapestry we see there on Poffo's wall. But there is, like atheists would view the universe as this strictly mechanical thing that has no end purpose or intention. I view I believe that it's all unfolding with an intent, the same way an acorn, has the intention of becoming a tree, even though, in that example, a particular acorn may not reach that maturation, but it has, by its design, it has that intention. Also, all living things throughout the universe, because all living creatures, big and small, and no matter how complex or simplified, they all have intentions. So when you take the collective of all living things throughout the infinite universe and take that collective intention, all these life forms, whether it's to get food, have sex, whatever, because it's kind of a pleasure pain thing. They're always moving towards pleasure, trying to avoid displeasure. But still, the universe as a whole, there is a story there, an undeniable, unchangeable story that unfolds, that was always meant to unfold and always will unfold. I mean, from us, the perceiver's point of view. I often talk about or describe this from the perceiver's point of view because we see things in sequence. We have to see things, in the duration of time. But there is that view of the universe, if you want to think of it as a fixed tapestry. And if you could see that tapestry, and if you saw the synopsis of that tapestry, the ultimate synopsis would be the yin and the yang. And that's not something that evolved. That's not something that was invented by man. And it's not something that came through evolution. It's this fixed, eternal concept. And all other concepts stem from that fundamental concept. Everything, even the idea of this glass that I'm holding, yes, I made that, or I didn't personally, but man made this glass. He materialized it. But the very concept of a glass is something that's eternal. And it's something that goes beyond this random thing that just happened to have happened. And even in great works of literature, you can look at these reoccurring themes in literature, like in Romeo and Juliet, or whatever, Gone with the Wind, Superman. It was always meant to be that we would write stories about a man that can fly around and save everybody. You could pretty much go to any planet where life was allowed to develop, and you would see their version of Superman. They would have Superman. So atheists often, I always say that atheists often don't give the universe enough credit or enough reverence, whereas pantheists, and theists give it too much. Sometimes theists will give way too much meaning.
They don't give the universe reverence. They give a transcendent.
Yeah, they focus it too much into that.
Here's how I would distinguish it. Okay, basically, here's what theists do. Theists actually.
I'm still hearing an echo, guys. By the way, there's an echo. I don't know.
That's weird. Yeah, I can hear the echo of my own voice too.
I don't hear an echo, so I guess that means I'm cooler than both of y'all.
I hope it's good in the recording, like it's not messed up.
Yeah, I hope so too, because this is a good talk, and I don't want it to be ruined. Hope people can understand this. But how I would distinguish it is theists do this bizarre thing where they view the universe as sort of a dumb, random, blind process, but then there's this extra God dude somewhere, and he constantly has to inject and make a miracle happen here, and bring order by working so hard to bring order to this chaotic universe thing. And so what they're doing is, I think, that's what they do, is they have a dualistic view, like, oh, the universe is this random thing, but then there's an intelligent, supernatural being outside of the universe to bring order.
They don't understand the real causes behind the forces and powers, extent within nature. They don't understand the real causes behind it, so they personalize and they project a personified, anthropomorphized creator person who's in control of everything, because that's all they like. As these religions evolved and as they were established, that's all they could understand. So they projected it into areas where they had no understanding. Sort of the source behind things, forces of nature, the cycles, the seasons, natural disasters, whatever it might be, and they couldn't account for naturally occurring events and phenomena, so they invented this construct, and then it's bled into all these other areas, and yet there is a creative force and a creative power. And it's nature. It's nature itself. There's no need to anthropomorphize it because we are the personification of nature.
Yeah. So first, I described the way theists do this and how they're viewing things, and I think it's a mistaken view. But then here's what happens with atheism. Now, first of all, atheism itself just means that you don't believe in that anthropomorphized, weird creator that's doing all that stuff, like in these Abrahamic religions. That's all atheism is. So you can have whatever view of the universe you feel like and still be an atheist. So that's the nice part of it.
In terms of the Abrahamic view, like, for example, I'm an atheist as far as the Abrahamic definition of God, or some Egyptian's definition of God, or some Buddhist, he might even diverge from my view. But the part where atheists seem to, they view the world as strictly like a pinball machine, and I do too, to an extent, a very intricate divine machine sort of thing. But with most atheists, at least the ones that don't want to believe in God, period. Again, my personal definition of God is just that which is responsible for my existence. So you would agree that there is that which is responsible for your existence, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. And I often almost never actually use the word God when I even talk about my pantheistic views. I always just say the universe or whatever, just to avoid that. But in terms of the common denominator of what the term God means, it is, at least we can all agree, God is usually defined as that which is responsible for our existence and the world and its own existence or whatever. And I don't mean I don't mean creation too. I need to point that out because I personally don't believe in an ultimate origin or ultimate creation. That's another common denominator among most religions and philosophies, that they do believe, if they do believe in a God, that he created everything. So that's the distinction between me personally. Even other pantheists actually believe in a creation point and an origin. But
remember, a lot of different pantheists have different views.
Yeah, they vary greatly among the broad strokes.
First of all, a point that I wanted to talk to you about this, Guyus, when I was listening to you guys, the other podcast you did. And here's something I would like to say. I would say nobody literally believes in the beginning of all things, because what traditional theists do is they say their God always existed. Their God that supposedly began the universe, their God always existed. Everyone believes in something that always existed. Yeah. And so from my perspective, let's just say the universe always existed. That keeps it simple.
Yeah, like I've told Poffo, it always digs a deeper hole. Like it's like a dog chasing its tail.
Infinite regress.
There's always going to be that somethingness that has to be explained and justified. So why don't we just
the physical universe started 13.8 billion years ago, but nature itself has always existed in some form or another. That's the way I look at it.
And even that number may be obviously incorrect, just due to us humans, our inability to understand the world better.
I mean, I'm trusting the scientists. I'm trusting the theoretical physicists, the particle physicists, the cosmologists and the astrophysicists to give me that information. So could be wrong. I'm basing it on what those experts have said, but it's not really that relevant. What I really want to talk about is what is your experience in terms of being a pantheist, because it can be considered a type of religion. It can be considered a philosophy. It can be considered a spiritual practice. It could be considered a form of spirituality. And what's really important, what I would like to help Chandler understand and Grok is this a form of spirituality to you, Guyus? And if so, how do you engage in that? How do you commune with, what is your personal experience with the divine? If you're in agreement that you see nature as divine, how do you connect with it, and what's your experience with it?
Okay, well, first of all, it would also depend on how you personally define a spiritual experience. But I have found that pantheism serves as a bridge, first of all, between atheism and theism, and it's a healthy balance between those two worldviews. I get great satisfaction on a mental and emotional level, like when I think about the universe. It's given me a great deal of comfort when I think about my worldview, the pantheistic view. I would imagine that most traditional theistic views are a lot more stressful, just because of the certain tenets that they believe in. But to me, it's also helped me to see a unity in my fellow humans, the animals, to see a cohesiveness, a community of all of us together, like in this single concert of the universe, because it's all like this ultimate concert that we're all a part of. So it's often made me feel like I'm part of this huge family that's always going to, in some form, exist. So it's always been very comforting to me in that sense. Like, I'm sure a lot of people have philosophical religious views where they feel isolated from society, or they feel in some way alone. But with me and with my pantheistic outlook, I definitely don't ever feel that. I've always felt, even as a kid, even like I said, before I even knew the word pantheism existed, I've always felt a sense of togetherness, or a sense. That's why I also naturally became a Democrat, or a moderate liberal, because I've always felt that we're all a part of this team, whether we like it or not, or part of this single family, and that we all need to be trying to work together to help one another instead of constantly trying to compete against one another. So that there should be more cooperation. I'd like to see that. But as far as my spiritual experience and all that, it's been a very positive one, and a very satisfying and a very rewarding one. And I also have, it's also been very rewarding to be one of the forerunners to advocate it, to express it, to share it, to communicate it with others. So that in of itself has been very rewarding.
And I know he represents that too. It's like his videos were a big influence on me, and let's see, the first pantheist I ever met would probably be Guyus, Paul Harrison, Peter, and Perry. Peter, obviously Peter Moriarty, creator of biotheism, and Perry Rod, the creator of the big pantheism page. That's kind of how we all came together. But it was you guys, and then Jay, of course, Jay Pierre. These are the first pantheists I'd ever met. And then I realized that so many more people are actually pantheists. They just don't realize it, Yeah. And they're using different language, and in the New Age circles, and in the pagan community, and the in the Druidry, and many modern philosophers, and sort of intellectuals, and a lot of atheists and agnostics are just moving in this direction. So. Not
everybody calls themselves a pantheist, and I think there's good reasons for that too sometimes. Just like, for example, like our earlier topic, some people may still have good reasons why they don't necessarily call themselves a determinist or tell people there's no free will, even though they know it to be true. They want to find a more tactful, more practical way of communicating something.
That's what I would say too. I would explain what you explained on that introduction, Chandler. I would just explain that, and I just wouldn't label it anything. I would just say this is a more accurate, a truer understanding of the way human psychology works and the way reality is.
In a sense, I see a problem that happens when labels are associated with something, because look at how people have about labels. Christian, atheist, pantheist, communist, communist, capitalist, Democrat, Republican, all these labels. And then as soon as you use a word and call yourself that, then they take everybody else in all of history who has used that same label and then lump you with them. Yeah. And so even though, I've called myself an atheist for years and a determinist and certain other labels, I'm like, wait a minute. Knowing a certain fact about the universe doesn't make me something. It's not that I'm a vegan. It's that they are carnists.
Just like it was in the film that was in Carnage. Yeah, that was awesome. That moment. I love that. I want to tell people that.
That was powerful.
But think about what you're saying, Chandler. We don't have that negative association with pantheism because it's never been formally established. We don't have a pantheistic
give it time.
No. Think about that. When you look back and we're like, okay, we don't even know who was a pantheist and who. I mean, we do. We have the wall of the luminaries, and we have our own lists of the people that we admire, and then we look up to Bruno and Spinoza and Einstein and Sagan and Watts and Carl Jung and Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, all these people. It was John Muir's birthday 2 days ago as well. So Walt Whitman, we have all these people, and we have this legacy, but it's never been sort of established and codified and formalized and presented to the public. So we don't yet suffer from that. There's no negative association with it. It's more like we suffer from the lack of information or lack of familiarity that people have.
Yeah, so that's what happens. Pantheism is still at that stage where people don't know what it is. Like, it's new to them, just like it's really new to me, actually. I didn't hear about pantheism until I met George, and I don't even like his type of pantheism. But here
we were talking about this earlier, being guys.
Yeah, his is just. It's just a word game. It's all about an argument that doesn't serve any practical purpose. But here's the thing. You better
hope he doesn't watch this podcast. He doesn't listen to this. He's going to get mad at you, man.
I highly doubt he will, but that's the truth, isn't it? I just don't see his pantheism as relevant. He just likes to prove he's right. But here's the thing.
So do you think that Guyus' pantheism is relevant? Do you think that what Guyus just described is important and significant? What do you think? What he just described?
Well, I can't really be sure. I'm still figuring it all out, but I don't want to prejudge it, if you know what I mean. I just have a lot of experience with George to know I don't like his way. I've been dealing with him for like 2.5 years.
Wouldn't it be great to have Guyus on? Wouldn't it be cool to have Guyus on to interject his points of view and talk about some of this stuff, though? To bring
that'd be nice. But what I would like to say, what I was going to say is, in time, pantheism, once it has an established reputation, because it's still relatively new for the public to hear about it, it will have those negative associations. People will be calling people pantheists as an insult, just like they do call someone a Nazi or a communist now. Or
how can they if true pantheism is represented and we're saying we should love and respect life, how do you denigrate that? What I cannot see it contains its own system of checks and balances.
Well, people will find a way. Just look at all the hateful things they say about pro-lifers.
Right. I was going to say they found a way to turn that into a derogatory term where it's like you're a pansy or you're a bleeding heart or whatever. Yeah. They find a way to just distort it and to turn it into something dark. But I would admit that turning pantheism into something dark in the minds of most people would probably be pretty hard. You know what I mean? So I actually got to go eat. Okay. I'm going to let y'all continue in hell. I may be able to jump back in a little later.
This is like we're making 5 different podcasts here.
Just remember, I think the limit for Google Hangout is 8 hours. They won't let you go beyond that.
Yeah, well, I actually better get off here anyway because I need to take a shower and get to bed and all that. But I'm so glad that we got to talk and you guys got a long talk too.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out how to split this up and edit it and stuff, and we can listen to it, the whole thing, and we'll figure it out.
We could take different sections. We could even take different parts. Like, hey, take this part, take this 30-minute clip here, and this 30-minute clip from over here, merge them into one recording and make an episode out of that. We could do that kind of stuff.
I feel like we had maybe 2 or 3 episodes here, maybe 3. You know, I can kind of see how based on the topics and subject matter.
Oh yeah, we could do that.
Okay, well,
we like the timestamps and stuff.
Thank you, Guyus, and thank you, Chandler. And let's do it again. Let's continue it, and we'll just contemplate and meditate on these things, and hopefully, it's been edifying and encouraging to all the listeners and to all of us.
Yeah,
so
it was fun.